Chapter 2976. It stood there and stared at Rong Yuetian's every move. Rong Yuetian was circling around the ice shell, and from time to time, he would reach out and knock on the ice shell, as if he thought he could break the ice shell. The moon god sword disagreed. It was such a sharp divine sword, and even after using all its strength, it was still unable to break the ice shell. He wanted to break it with his fingers. How was that possible? Rong Yuetian circled around the ice shell for a moment, then suddenly stopped and reached out to the moon god sword. Cut me! The moon god sword was speechless. If it cut him, it would directly cut off his palm. Quick! Rong Yuetian was impatient. The moon god sword did not know what he was trying to do, so it had no choice but to go up and cut his palm lightly. In the end, it did not even cut through his skin. Rong Yuetian frowned. Are you not full? Use more strength. So the moon god sword used more strength. There was a big cut in Rong Yuetian's palm. If he had not used a spell to stop the bleeding in time, the blood that flowed out would have formed a river. He glanced at it, and the moon god sword shrunk back guiltily. Rong Yuetian could not be bothered with it. He used his fingertips to dip in the blood from his palm, and quickly drew some talismans on the ice shell. A bright red talisman was inserted into the ice shell. His movements were indescribably fast, and the moon god sword felt a little dazzled. After a moment, the ice shell that was stronger than a diamond shell made a fine cracking sound. Poof! The entire ice shell shattered, and Ji Xinyu, who was sealed inside, fell down. Rong Yuetian immediately held her in his arms. Her body was cold and soft, and there was no breath in his arms. Her face was as pale as a crystal, as if it would break with a pinch. Because he had destroyed the ice shell, blood gushed out from her wounds again. Rong Yuetian's black eyes seemed to be surging with anger, but he suppressed it. He hugged her tightly, and regardless of whether she could hear him or not, he said in her ear, "Xinyu, I'm here. I'll save you, don't be afraid. I'll be by your side." He hugged her tightly with one hand, while his other hand moved the blood talisman continuously. Specks of transparent light flew out from the shattered ice shell, and flew into Ji Xinyu's body, following Rong Yuetian's hand gestures. Ji Xinyu, who had already lost all signs of life, moved her fingers slightly as these faint lights entered her body. Moon god sword had been nervously waiting at the side, watching everything. Seeing her slightly moving fingertips was more exciting than seeing any other scene. It immediately jumped up and was about to rush over. However, he was pushed away by Rong Yuetian. You have a strong murderous aura. You will hurt her. Thus, the moon god sword hurriedly retreated. It was still very impressed with this high immortal in front of it. He had actually managed to break the ice shell with just a wave of his hand. It had struggled for a long time, but it still hadn't been able to break it. Although Rong Yuetian's handsome face was so heavy that it could drip water, his movements were smooth and fast, like moving clouds and flowing water. He first stopped the bleeding for her, then waved his hand to set up a transparent soft cover around her body. Then, he quickly rushed up with her in his arms. He didn't want to know how she had ended up in this state. He wanted to save her first. Fortunately, he had come in time. If he had come a day later, even if she didn't lose her life, she would have lost her skills forever and become an ordinary woman. This might not be a big deal to other women, but to Ji Xinyu, losing her skills was crueler than losing her life. Chapter 2977. He was very glad. He was glad that he was able to save her in time. The moon god sword hurriedly followed. When Rong Yuetian entered the sea, it was still windy and snowy outside, as if it was the end of the world. However, when he went out to sea, it was calm and peaceful. The old icebergs had disappeared, and new ones had formed. It was a world of glass. Naturally, it was extremely cold outside. The two of them were fine, but in Ji Xinyu's state of near death, this kind of cold could take her life. The thin cover he had placed on her could block water but not wind. Moreover, it broke the moment she came out of the water. In this state, she could not use the power of origin to protect her body. So Rong Yuetian opened his outer robe and wrapped her in his arms. His robe was too thin and did not have much of an effect on keeping her warm. Fortunately, His body was warm after he circulated his power, so she did not immediately freeze into a lump of ice in his arms. The moon god sword was stunned. Its master was like a baby in the arms of supreme deity Rong Yuetian, wrapped tightly in his loose outer robe. Not even a strand of hair was exposed. Did supreme deity Rong Yuetian have an inner robe on him? It seemed to have seen him only wearing such a thin outer robe. Quickly dig an ice cave, quick. Rong Yuetian circulated his power to warm the woman's body in his arms, while instructing the moon god's sword that was hanging there like a piece of wood. Although these icebergs were frozen harder than iron, they were not much of a problem for the moon god's sword. After a while, it followed Rong Yuetian's instructions and dug a big hole in the icebergs, big enough for 4 to 5 people to lie inside. Rong Yuetian carried Ji Xunyu in, but the moon god's sword was still puzzled. Why didn't he just carry her back to a warm place? Why did he have to stay here? Rong Yuetian naturally did not care about the moon god's sword's doubts. After he entered the cave, he started to get busy. He pulled out a blanket from his storage space and covered Ji Xunyu with it to warm her up. Then he started a fire in the ice cave, slowly increasing the temperature in the ice cave. The moon god's sword was puzzled. If the temperature in the ice cave increased, wouldn't the ice cave melt? However, Rong Yuishinlin had set up some kind of enchantment in the ice cave. In the raging bonfire, the temperature of the ice cave quickly rose, almost as warm as spring. However, the surrounding walls of the cave were still hard, as if they were made of bricks. The wounds on Ji Xinyue's chest and back needed to be treated in time. Rong Yuishinlin caressed the blanket wrapped around Ji Xinyue, then looked at the sword hanging in the air. Get out! Moon god sword. Why should it go out? It wanted to see its master get better. It hung there as if it didn't understand. Rong Yuishinlin's eyes flashed. This time she used telepathy. I want to heal her. You can't watch. Get out first. The moon god sword's body stiffened. He was not its master, but he could still communicate with it using a secret language. One had to know that once a divine sword like this recognized its master, it could only communicate with its master without any barriers. When it communicated with others, it mainly relied on gestures. Unfortunately, the moon god sword was at Sundara, and it was too lazy to do so. It turned out that it could still communicate with this exalted immortal. The moon god sword was no longer depressed and mute. It tried to send him a message. How can you communicate with me? Rong Yuishinlin glanced at it and said very bluntly, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you now. Get out first. I'll save her first. I'll talk to you later. At the crucial moment, the moon god sword was still very sensible. It finally flew out. Chapter 2978. However, before it flew out, it couldn't help but say something that it had wanted to say for a long time. Your quilt is really ugly. It's gray and doesn't have any sense of beauty. Rong Yuishinlin was speechless. He couldn't be bothered with this ignorant sword. He gently opened up half of the quilt and wrapped it around her lower body, only exposing her injured upper body. She was wearing a blue diving suit. If it wasn't damaged, it would be warm enough. It seemed that she had made sufficient preparations for this trip. However, once it was damaged, it was equivalent to a rag, and all its functions were gone. If he wanted to treat her wounds, he had to get rid of the diving suit. Rong Yuishinlin held her in his arms and tore off the rag on her upper body with one hand. Her pink skin was pale due to blood loss, but her figure was still very good. Whether it was her full breasts or her slender waist, the curve was extremely perfect. Rong Yuishinlin naturally didn't have any thoughts at this time, but when he saw her body, his heart skipped a beat and his eyes narrowed slightly. She originally had a lot of scars on her body, but after Rong Yuishinlin's treatment, most of those big and small scars had disappeared. Now there were 2 more big ones. Rong Yuishinlin secretly clenched his fists. No wonder she didn't care about the scars on her body, and wasn't curious about the method he used to remove them. For someone who got injured so frequently, she really couldn't care less. Rong Yuishinlin looked down at her thick and fine curly eyelashes. She looked very well-behaved and obedient in her coma, making people want to dote on her. Who would have thought that such a beautiful girl would have such a strong heart? fighting, drinking, upholding justice. None of them were lacking. She was good at everything, even better than men. How did Ning Xuema describe this kind of person? A tough woman. She had a real image. When Rong Yuishenlin was watching the Almighty and Ning Xuema break up, he had thought about his other half, and imagined his sweetheart. He had always thought that he liked the gentle, elegant, educated and reasonable type, such as Yunqi, or the lively, cute and innocent kind such as Jiyu. He felt that the reason why there was no chemistry between him and Yunqi was because, firstly, he knew that she liked Shenjuli. Secondly, he really didn't have any feelings for Yunqi. It didn't feel right. Only Jiyu had truly moved his heart, but the one who had a grudge with Jiyu was Yi Qianshang. It was just a wisp of his battle soul, but it wasn't the complete him. Now he didn't expect that the person he liked was this tomboy, who looked like a delicate flower in front of him. She was the only one who could affect his emotions, and make him feel the torture of not seeing her, for a day felt like 3 years. Although the injuries on Ji Shenyu's chest and back were extremely dangerous, in front of Rongyue Tianlan, who could no longer be described as a godly doctor, such injuries were nothing. Especially this kind of sword wound, he treated it even more skillfully, his movements as smooth as the clouds. He first took care of the things behind her. After he was done, he started to take care of the things in front of her. What she had suffered wasn't just a superficial wound. After all, there was a hole in her body, and the damage to her internal organs wasn't light. She needed him to perform some minor surgery on her, to repair her internal organs as well. Of course, his repair wasn't a major surgery. Chapter 2979. Of course, he wasn't going to open her chest and perform a major surgery. Instead, he was going to use magic to force the injured parts of her body to heal automatically. This was also a delicate job, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. Usually, Rongyue Tianlan would have an easy time performing this kind of surgery, but today he couldn't relax. This was because his beloved woman was under his palm. What was worse was that he had to press his palm on her chest during the operation, which was to the left of her tall and beautiful peak. Even Rongyue Tianlan, who was used to seeing the world, felt a little uneasy. He took a few deep breaths before he calmed down and suppressed the restlessness in his heart. Just as he was about to circulate his power, the delicate body under his palm suddenly moved. Rongyue Tianlan's attention was originally on her wound, but when she moved, he seemed to have realized something. He raised his head to look at her face, and then met her beautiful slightly opened eyes. Their eyes met. Rongyue Tianlan's hand trembled. She actually woke up at this time. Rongyue Tianlan's hands and feet acted before his brain, and he raised his hand to hit her sleeping acupoint. Therefore, Ji Shenyue, who had just regained consciousness and hadn't seen the person in front of her clearly, fell into a deep sleep again. Rongyue Tianlan calmed down, looked at his hand, then looked at Ji Shenyue, who had closed her eyes again, and sighed slightly. Well, this kind of surgery required the patient's absolute cooperation, and sleeping was the best way to cooperate. Therefore, he hit her acupoint to give her better treatment, and not because he felt guilty. In fact, he was overthinking. At this time, although Ji Shenyue opened her eyes, she wasn't really awake. It was just a conditioned reflex. Time passed by, and the damaged organs in Ji Shenyue's body finally slowly glued back together. This kind of gluing was the same as a wound stitched by a surgeon. In order for it to completely heal, she still needed to cooperate with his telekinesis after she woke up. This kind of connection consumed a lot of telekinesis, not to mention that Rongyue Tianlan had been continuously using his telekinesis. After this surgery, he was sweating profusely, and his whole body was weak. He lowered his head to look at the person who had been sleeping, and her complexion looked a little better than before. After dealing with the internal injuries, it was much easier to deal with the external injuries. He stitched up the wound for her, and applied the special healing medicine. When he felt that there were no major problems, he breathed a sigh of relief. After finishing all this, Rongyue Tianlan felt that her hands and feet were a little weak. She wanted to use the cleansing spell on her again, but she felt a little strenuous. Rongyue Tian rummaged through her storage space, This girl didn't seem to have any desire for beauty. Other than men's clothes, there were only men's clothes in her storage space. Rong Yutianlan really didn't fancy those men's clothes. He had a few sets of women's clothing in his storage space, and each set was perfect. Rong Yutianlan thought for a while, then took out a set of sky blue clothes, and helped her change into them one by one. This dress suited her very well, making her waist look even more slender, and her skin even fairer. After doing all this, Rong Yutianlan lowered his eyes to look at her, and his heart suddenly trembled. He remembered that dream. In the dream, she was also wearing such clothes and crawling at the bottom of the sea. At first glance, it looked like Jiyu, but when she raised her head and revealed her face, it was Ji Shenyue. Chapter 2980. In the dream, the two of them had merged into one. Was this what he thought about in the day and dreamed at night? Or was it some kind of warning? He caressed her pretty face, and subconsciously wanted to pull out her soul to take a look. However, the moment his finger touched her forehead, he retracted his hand. He had already taken out her soul to take a look, but there was nothing similar to Ji Yu's. The result would be the same if he brought it out again. It would be a waste of energy, and would be detrimental to her recovery. He stared at her pretty face in a daze for a moment. In the depths of his heart, he felt that Ji Shinyu was Jiyu, but the results of all his probing proved otherwise. Was there something else that he hadn't thought of? Originally, he had given up on trying to find out who Jiyu was, but he had coincidentally met Yunqi, who had wandered to this continent. Yunqi's soul-searching bird could find people based on their souls. Furthermore, Yunqi had developed the ability to travel through time and space. It could travel through time and space to find people based on the person's request. He had an idea, and asked Yunqi to let the bird go to Yi Qianshang, and Ji use space-time to take a look. He had accurately described the characteristics and age of that continent, and offered his battle soul for the bird to smell. This way, the bird would be able to find that space-time, based on the aura of his battle soul, and travel to the era when Jiyu was still alive. The bird would then find Jiyu, sniff out the aura of her soul, and travel back. This way, it would be able to find the real Jiyu. He had always felt that Ji Tianyu wasn't Jiyu, but she matched all the characteristics, so he could only use this method. The process was a little complicated. The soul-searching bird had consumed a lot of energy to complete such a large project, so it had to eat a good meal to replenish its energy. Yunqi had mentioned what the soul-searching bird needed to eat the most, so Rong Yutianlan naturally did his best to fulfill it. This was how Ji Shenyu had seen the mirage. According to Yunqi's calculations, the soul-searching bird would need at least half a month to come back. Only 8 days had passed, so the soul-searching bird wouldn't be back anytime soon. Rong Yutianlan massaged his throbbing temples. Forget it. Let's not think about this for now. The soul-searching bird would be able to solve the puzzle once it returned, so there was no hurry. His gaze fell on the sky blue dress she was wearing, and he frowned slightly. That dream wasn't a good one, so if she wore this dress now, it would be a bad omen. He would only let her wear this if he was crazy. He raised his hand, and took off the dress for her. He was the one who put it on for her, so naturally, he took it off smoothly. However, when he was halfway through, a hand suddenly grabbed his hand. Rong Yutianlan paused for a moment. She raised her head and met Ji Shenyu's clear eyes. At this moment, there was a trace of embarrassment and disbelief in those eyes. She's awake. After all, she was a seriously injured person. Although she managed to hold on to Rong Yutianlan's hand that was taking off her clothes, she didn't have much strength, let alone pull him away. Rong Yutianlan didn't expect her to wake up at this time. She had obviously suffered such a serious injury, and he had even hit her sleeping acupoint. More than half of Ji Shenyu's clothes had been taken off by him. At this moment, her upper body was naked, and her boundless spring scenery was under his palm. At this moment, his hand was still tugging at her clothes. This situation was no different from a lecher taking advantage of a person who was unconscious to take advantage of them. Ji Shenyue. Rong Yuishenlin. Chapter 2981. No matter how thick-skinned Rong Yue Tianlan was at this moment, his handsome face blushed. Looking into her angry eyes, he coughed and explained. I was helping you change your clothes. Ji Shenyue actually thought that she was going to die when she was trapped in the ice coffin. The moment her soul was about to sink into the darkness, the last image that appeared in her mind was actually Rong Yue Tianlan. When they were in danger in the tunnel, he had told her to live well and not to take risks. Not only did she take risks, she was also going to lose her life. She had lived a colorful and carefree life. People who took risks often had to have the awareness to put their heads on their belts. Therefore, she was not afraid of death. Although this day came suddenly, she was not too surprised. The moment she fell into a coma, the only regret in her heart was that she could not see Rong Yue Tianlan again. If she died like this, would he be sad when he found out? Maybe a little. After all, she had gone through so many trials and tribulations with him, and was even his fiancé. However, his sadness should be like a gust of wind, and would not leave too much of a shadow. He had countless female confidants around him, and in his heart, she was probably just an insignificant one. At that time, she did not expect that he would come to save her. After all, looking at the scene in the mirage, he should be in the south with warm mountains and warm water. Moreover, he could not have known that she was in danger here. He did not install clairvoyance on her. To her, her memory after sinking into the ice coffin was blank. When she finally regained consciousness, she found that she was being molested the moment she opened her eyes. The person who was supposed to be tens of thousands of miles away was actually sitting beside her, and taking off her clothes. Ji Shenyue felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She was embarrassed, angry, and incredulous. Her face was originally sickly pale, but now it was flushed red. Although she had a forthright personality, she had never taken off her clothes so cleanly in front of others, especially in front of a man. What was the most embarrassing thing in the world? It was clearly not doing anything bad, but being caught red-handed while taking off someone's clothes. Rong Yue Tianlan was very embarrassed, especially under the gaze of that pair of clear eyes. Now that things had developed to this point, he naturally could not take off her clothes anymore. He first turned his back to her, as if to avoid arousing suspicion. Then he coughed and organized his thoughts. Don't misunderstand. Listen to me. The bonfire in the ice cave burned brightly, making it as warm as spring. Rong Yue Tianlan finally finished explaining the whole story. Ji Shenyue, who was behind her, had already rearranged her dress with trembling fingers. She wanted to sit up, but Rong Yue Tianlan seemed to have eyes on the back of her head. A bamboo flute was placed on her shoulder. Don't move, you need to rest for your injuries. Thus, Ji Shenyue continued to lie down. Rong Yue Tianlan also finished his story. Of course, he didn't mention that she first looked like Ji Yu in his dream. He only said that he had a feeling in his dream. After saying that, he asked, "Do you believe what I said?" Although he liked her, wanted to marry her, and had even fantasized about her before, he didn't believe her. But that didn't mean that he wanted her to think of him as a lecher. So he still had to explain himself. Ji Shenyue was silent for a while, then finally replied, "I believe you." After all, she had known Rong Yue Tianlan for so long, so she still understood his character. He was doing this to save her. Ji Shenyue understood the principle of urgency. Chapter 2982. He treated his friends really well. Not only did he treat the lady in white well, but he also put in so much effort for her bird. He treated her well too. Sensing that she was in danger, he came all the way to save her. Looking at how pale his face was, it was obvious that he had used up a lot of energy to save her. Warmth rose in her heart, but at the same time, there was an indescribable bitterness mixed in. She herself could not figure out where this bitterness came from. It seemed to be jealousy. No, what was she jealous of? She had nothing to do with him, and she was no longer his fiancée. He treated her as well as any other woman, so she should feel grateful and satisfied. She took a deep breath and suppressed the emotions that should not be in her heart. Her body was still very weak, and her head was dizzy, but she still smiled at him, showing that she really believed him. Being believed by someone was a very happy thing, especially when it was believed by the person she loved. Rong Yuishenlin's handsome face bloomed like spring flowers, and his eyes seemed to sparkle as he looked at her. He was about to say something when Ji Xunyue spoke again. Supreme Deity Rong Yuishenlin, thank you. The smile on Rong Yuishenlin's lips faded, and he repeated as if he did not understand, thank you? Ji Xunyue nodded and tried her best to express her gratitude. I will repay you for saving my life. In the future I will. Rong Yuishenlin crossed his arms and looked at her with a faint smile. What will you do in the future? In the future, I will repay you. Rong Yuishenlin smiled, and his beautiful eyes narrowed. This saving grace is not an ordinary grace. How do you plan to repay me? How will you repay me? Ji Xunyue. How could he ask someone to repay him so openly? Her head became even dizzier, and she could not think of anything for a moment. She just looked at him with her eyes wide open. Rong Yuishenlin said indifferently. So the repayment you were talking about is just a verbal repayment. Then don't say anything about repayment or gratitude. I don't like these empty words. Ji Xunyue. She pursed her lips and turned defense into offense. Then what do you want in return? She didn't want to owe anyone a favor. As long as she could do it, she would do it. Rong Yutianlan's gaze fell on her pretty face, slowly scanning her eyes, her nose, her lips from her forehead. Ji Xunyue couldn't lie still under his gaze. If not for her weak body, she would have jumped up long ago. At the same time, alarm bells rang in her heart. If the repayment he wanted was to devote myself to him, then her alarm bell had yet to be officially rung when Rong Yuetianlan smiled gently. The repayment I want is very simple. She bent down slowly. Was he going to kiss her? Ji Xunyue's heart raced, her fingers clenched tightly, but she closed her eyes slightly. His breath was getting closer and closer, and that faint cold fragrance was getting stronger and stronger. Her heart felt like it was being gently grabbed by someone, and then lifted up. A soft warmth fell on her forehead. When her body stiffened, the warmth quickly disappeared. She opened her eyes in astonishment. He had already stood up and said indifferently, All right, you've already repaid me. You don't have to feel like you owe me anything. Ji Xunyue. It turned out that he had only kissed her forehead. That kiss was like a butterfly's wing, and it left as soon as it touched, without any lust. Chapter 2983. However, it was as if a faint electric current had passed through her heart, rendering her speechless for a moment. She didn't know if she was relieved or disappointed. Your body is still weak, you should rest and recover your energy first. I will help you meditate to treat your internal injuries later. Rong Yuishenlin stood up and used the quilt to wrap her up again to prevent her from catching a cold. Ji Xunyue also saw the quilt on her body clearly. She was stunned and her eyes widened. Cloud shark quilt. This is a cloud shark quilt? Rong Yuishenlin nodded slightly. He didn't expect her to be so knowledgeable. Ji Xunyue suddenly struggled, trying to get out of the quilt. Rong Yuishenlin pressed her down with one hand and frowned. What's wrong? Are there lice biting you on the quilt? Ever since she had thanked him, his words seemed to be filled with thorns, and there was a faint sharpness to them. Ji Xunyue pursed her lips. This quilt is too precious. I have blood on me. I will spoil it. Cloud shark quilt was said to be woven by the virgin sharkmen, using the moonlight thread on a full moon night. A piece the size of a handkerchief could be exchanged for a city in the human world. The value of a cloud shark quilt, that was woven directly into a quilt, was even more immeasurable. Even the king of the Nantiang clan might not have the fortune to enjoy it. This quilt had a special characteristic. It was really warm in winter and cool in summer. When covering the body, it could always be adjusted to the best temperature for the human body. Moreover, it was obviously a thin layer, but lying inside it felt like lying on clouds, soft and extremely comfortable. This kind of quilt could no longer be described as priceless. It couldn't be more precious. However, this quilt also had a fatal flaw. The quilt couldn't be stained with blood. Once it was stained with blood, the quilt would quickly change color and become like a tattered cotton tapestry. Although its functions were still there, its appearance would become uglier. She had bled a lot just now. Although he had already treated it, the traces were still there. If she ruined his quilt because of this, then she would owe him even more. Rongyu Ishinlin pressed his palm on the quilt on her body, making her unable to move. You know it's good for you. However, when I operated on you just now, you were lying on this bed. I don't know how much blood has stained it. If you wanted to ruin it, it would have been ruined long ago. Isn't it a little too late for you to worry about this now? Ji Xinyu's pretty face flushed red. This alright. She finally stopped struggling. In the future, she would find a way to return him a treasure of similar value. He had really sacrificed a lot for her. And it wasn't an ordinary amount. Ji Xinyu couldn't help but say, that. Rongyu Ishinlin stretched out a finger and pressed it on her lips. Don't say thank you again. Her words of thanks pierced his heart. He did not like to hear it. Ji Shenyu's body was weak. She didn't even have the strength to pull his fingers away. She tilted her head slightly, avoiding his fingers. I didn't want to thank you. I saw that you used up a lot of telekinesis. You should need to meditate to recover. You can pull a corner of the blanket and sit down. Rong Yuetian's eyes lit up slightly, and she agreed readily. All right. He pulled a corner of the blanket and spread it on the ice before sitting down. He frequently overused his telekinesis, and indeed needed to meditate to recover. Before meditating, he even reminded her, if you feel unwell, just call me. He was sitting right in front of her. He would be able to sense it if she moved slightly. Because they were afraid of disturbing each other, Rongyu Ishinlin meditated with his back facing Ji Xinyu. Chapter 2984. Because he was afraid that they would disturb each other, Rongyu Tianlan meditated with his back facing Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu looked at his tall and straight back for a moment, then closed her eyes. She also wanted to regulate her breathing to recover, but just as she did, she realized that something was wrong. Her cinnabar field was empty, and she couldn't find a trace of psychokinesis. Her mind went blank. Could it be that she had lost her psychokinesis? Had she lost her martial arts? She tried to circulate it a few more times, but it was all in vain. She closed her eyes, and her whole body seemed to be stepping in the void. She almost didn't dare to imagine what would happen to her after losing her psychokinesis. Her special experience made her very insecure, and she was used to relying on herself for everything. She always felt that she could live well on her own. Even if there was no love, no family, she could live well on her own and live a carefree life. But if she lost her psychokinesis, she would be an ordinary woman. Besides her impressive psychokinesis, she didn't know anything else. How could she live on this continent? More importantly, she still had a lot of things to do. For example, investigate Huang Qingliu's background, or Xie Fengliu's true identity. Her heart was on fire. She opened her eyes and wanted to ask Rongyu Tianlan. But he was already meditating, and there was a faint white light surrounding him. People who were meditating couldn't be disturbed, so Ji Xinyu could only swallow her questions and continue to try to transfer her psychokinesis. But her body was weak, and she had so many questions in her heart. Even when she was fine, it was easy to be distracted while meditating, let alone under such circumstances. She was so flustered that she couldn't circulate her psychokinesis. After all, Rongyu Tianlan was thinking about her, so after meditating for a cycle, he opened his eyes after an hour. As soon as he woke up, he felt that something was wrong behind him. Her breathing was a little rough. He immediately turned around, and his temples throbbed. She had a fever, and fainted from the fever. Her originally pale face was red, and her small mouth was slightly open. The hot air she exhaled could burn people to death. Rongyu Tianlan. Logically speaking, although her injuries were serious, after his treatment, she shouldn't have a fever anymore. Where did he go wrong? Rongyu Tianlan quickly checked her, and after checking once, he wanted to slap himself on the head. She had a female body. If a female body was injured in such a cold place, the cold air would enter her body and freeze her blood vessels. In other words, she couldn't use her psychokinesis for the time being. If she forced herself to use her psychokinesis, it would only worsen her injuries and cause the cold to penetrate deeper into her bones. He was a little annoyed by her "thank you" just now, so he actually forgot to tell her about it before he started meditating. With her personality, she must have been practicing while he was meditating. Because of the high fever, she began to tremble under the blanket. In her coma, her teeth chattered nonstop, and her red little face began to turn pale again. Cold! Her little mouth unconsciously let out a cold breath as her body shrank even more under the blanket. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her for a moment, steeled her heart, and untied the blanket that was wrapped around her. She was currently suffering from a coldine injury, and the fever was just a symptom. In fact, her body was extremely cold. Simply covering her with a blanket would not be able to restore her body temperature. Only a pure yang body would be able to force the cold out of her body. The bonfire in the cave was still burning, and the cave walls were flickering. Under the blanket, Rongyue Tianlan hugged Ji Xunyue tightly in his arms. Both of them were only wearing underwear. Chapter 2985. Under the blanket, Rongyue Tianlan held Ji Xunyue tightly in his arms. Both of them were only wearing undergarments. Their bodies were pressed against each other, and their limbs were tightly intertwined. There was no gap between them. Rongyue Tianlan had never been so close to anyone in his life. Not to mention in this position, hugging a woman in his arms was a romantic thing that all men yearned for. But Rongyue Tianlan felt a little sad at this moment. Men and women in this position were usually doing the most intimate things. They could do whatever they wanted without any scruples. But he was hugging his beloved and could only heal her. Was this a test of his willpower by the heavens? He looked at her in his arms and couldn't help but kiss her forehead. "Xunyue, I think you owe me too much. It seems that you can only repay me with your body." She was still trembling in his arms. Rongyue Tianlan didn't dare to neglect her. He clasped her fingers tightly under the blanket and suppressed his restless heart. He closed his eyes and was about to circulate his power when there was a flash of light at the entrance of the cave. The moon god sword barged in and suddenly saw such an erotic scene. It seemed to be stunned. "What are you doing?" It was still a pure sword. It didn't understand what this position meant. Rongyue Tianlan gritted his teeth and only replied with 3 words. "Get out!" The moon god sword. Rongyue Tianlan's aura was too strong. The moon god sword could only leave with its tail between its legs. Time passed by. Rongyue Tianlan circulated the true yang in his body and transmitted it into her body through their close skin. When Rongyue Tianlan hugged her, he felt as if he was hugging a small hot pot. But when he circulated his telekinesis, the cold in her body was stimulated. That coldness entered his body, like a cold silver needle swimming in his body, causing him to shiver despite his profound cultivation. He didn't expect that there would be so much cold chi in her body. It seemed that her injuries were far beyond his expectations. In order to achieve his own selfish goals, he actually hurt her like this. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes darkened and flashed with coldness. He had to get justice for her. Another 4 hours passed. The cold poison in Ji Xunyue's body was finally forced out little by little. Both of them were drenched in sweat, especially Ji Xunyue. She looked as if she had just been fished out of the water, and even her hair was wet and stuck to her scalp. Fortunately, the color of her skin had returned to normal. It was as white as jade, and there were pearl-like beads of sweat on it. It was soft and smooth as he held it in his arms. The faint fragrance of a virgin was released along with the sweat, and it densely filled his nose. Rongyue Ishinlin once again circulated her qi in her body, and felt that her blood vessels were no longer stagnant. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. Using this method to heal her naturally consumed a large amount of his psychokinesis. The psychokinesis that he recovered from meditating just now was also completely used up. He was also very tired. After he finished cultivating, he wanted to crawl out of the blanket and put on his clothes again. But the moment he moved, he felt his limbs go soft, and his vision turned black. He was too tired. He would be fine after a short rest. Just a short rest. He closed his eyes, intending to take a nap, but he didn't expect that he would fall asleep in a daze. Ji Xunyue thought that waking up from her coma to find Rongyue Tianlan stripping her clothes with one hand was the biggest shock. But she didn't expect that it wasn't the biggest shock. Only an even bigger shock. When she woke up again, she found herself naked. Chapter 2986. She and him, who was almost naked, were hugging each other like yin and yang fish. Their bodies were almost completely pressed together. And Ji Shen, you could even feel the texture of his skin. His handsome face was right in front of her. It was the first time she was observing him from such a distance. His eyes were slightly closed, and his thick eyelashes formed a semicircle shadow under his eyes. His light breath blew on her face, warm and numbing. Anyone who woke up and saw this situation would be stunned. Ji Shenyu's head exploded, and all her blood seemed to rush to her face. This scene was too awkward. If it was in the past, she would have slapped him away and stuck him to the wall. But now she just wanted to push him away subconsciously, and then climb out by herself. But just as she moved her arm, it affected her wound. Before she could raise her arm, her forehead was already covered in cold sweat. And Rongyue Tianlan was not sleeping well, so he woke up the moment she moved. When he opened his eyes, he was looking at her red little face. In this situation, the two of them were extremely awkward, and Ji Shenyu's face was so red that it could steam a duck egg. Rongyue Tianlan nervously asked a nonsense question. "You're awake?" Ji Shenyu, who always boasted that she was as handsome as a man, was so embarrassed that she didn't know where to put her hands and feet. She didn't care about the pain of her wound, and desperately tried to push him away. "You, let go of me first." She was only wearing a thin doo-doo, and her towering breasts were tightly pressed against his chest, and his legs were also entangled with hers. Ever since Rongyue Tianlan found out about Liu Xiahui from Ning Xuema, he often felt that his self-control was stronger than Liu Xiahui's, and that he was a true gentleman. But now he felt that his self-control was crumbling. He was already having a hard time holding back when he was hugging a soft and fragrant body. But now that she moved in his arms, it immediately made his manly instincts break through his self-control, and he raised his head proudly. Their bodies were still pressed against each other, and the changes in his body were naturally felt by her. Her leg was being pushed by something. When Ji Shenyu realized what it was, her whole body was almost burning. She had never scolded anyone before. "Lecher! Bastard, let go of me." She struggled even harder. Rongyue Tianlan was also extremely embarrassed. He had always had the image of a gentleman in front of her, but now he had directly become a rogue. However, her struggle obviously wouldn't work. Stimulating his manly instincts was one thing, but more importantly, her injury didn't allow her to move around like this. He had no choice but to lift his hand and hit her acupoints. "You don't move. I'll go out." The two of them were wrapped in a blanket. In order to prevent Ji Shenyu from catching a cold, Rong Yuishenlin had wrapped the blanket tightly just now. At this moment, it was not easy to remove it from the inside. As a result, their skin inevitably bumped into each other a few times. Ji Shenyu was, after all, a martial artist. Whenever she came into contact with someone, she would habitually check the firmness of the other party's skin, the strength of their bones, and so on. When Rongyue Tianlan was wearing clothes, he was a tall and handsome young master. It was easy to give people the feeling that he was a gigolo. But now, under the skin contact, she could feel that his muscles were firm and strong. His body lines were perfect and full of tension. It should be very beautiful. When this thought formed in her mind, Ji Shenyu's entire body stiffened. Chapter 2987. What was she thinking about? Her face was already red, and now it was as red as a tomato. Her face was burning, and even her ears were burning. She didn't dare to open her eyes until he got out of the quilt. She heard a rustling sound. He must be changing his clothes. When he was done, she opened her eyes and said, "I think you should give me." Before she could say an explanation, she hurriedly closed her eyes again. Rong Yuishenlin was only wearing a pair of pants, and the robe in his hand was only halfway done. When she opened her eyes, she could still see the firm and strong skin on his upper body, and even the 2 points on his chest. "You lecher!" Ji Shenyu couldn't help but scold him again. God, why was he wearing his clothes so slowly? Didn't he usually put on his clothes with a wave of his hand? Rong Yuishinlin was also miserable. In order to get here, he used a lot of telekinesis to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. When he got here, he dived into the sea to save people without taking a break. Breaking the ice shell consumed a lot of his telekinesis. After coming out, whether it was condensing wood to make a bonfire, treating her internal injuries, or forcing the cold poison out of her body, it was all very taxing on his telekinesis. Even if he was made of iron, at this moment, it was as if he had been hollowed out, and his limbs were weak. Naturally, he didn't want to waste any more telekinesis to wear his clothes. It was just a normal speed. He didn't expect that in her eyes, it would become a symbol of lechery. Rong Yuishinlin was also embarrassed at first, but he had always been thick-skinned. When the awkwardness reached a certain level, he didn't feel awkward anymore. He slowly put on his clothes, then sat down on a futon, and looked at her blushing face. Your martial arts are very good, but your vocabulary of scolding people is quite poor. Do you only know how to scold lechers? Ji Xinhua opened her eyes and glared at him. What kind of words do you want to hear? Rong Yuishinlin flicked his sleeves and taught her. In this case, you can still scold hooligans and vulgar. Ji Xinhua was speechless. She was so angry that she was confused. In her anger, the tip of her nose was sweating. Rong Yuetian took out a handkerchief from nowhere and wiped the sweat on her face. Do you want to hear my explanation? Ji Xinhua's acupoint had been sealed, so she couldn't avoid his hand even if she wanted to. She gritted her teeth. Shouldn't you explain? She was so angry that her face was red, her eyes were wide open, and her little mouth was tightly pursed. At this moment, she unconsciously revealed the nature of a girl. Rong Yuetian Lan looked at her for a moment, and faintly felt that her expression was somewhat familiar. It was similar to Ji Yu's embarrassed expression at that time. Although their faces were different, their expressions were surprisingly similar. Rong Yuishinlin's heart seemed to have been hit hard by something. He was in a daze. Ji Xinyu impatiently said, "Say something." The way he looked at her made her flustered for no reason. Rong Yutianlan finally regained her senses and nodded. Actually, it's not difficult to explain. He explained the situation just now and the principle of his treatment. In the end, he looked at her rather hurt and said, I sacrificed my chastity to save you again. Do you want to say thank you again? Ji Shenyue. She gritted her teeth again. I don't want to say thank you. It was her chastity that was in danger, okay? She was the one who sacrificed the most this time, okay? Not only had he seen her body, but he had also touched it. Even if they were engaged, they might not be able to do what she did with him. Chapter 2988. She didn't expect his healing methods to be so abnormal. Rong Yuishinlin laughed instead. Well, you finally improved. You don't thank me so much anymore. Ji Xinyu looked at him. I heard that you're a doctor who has cured countless patients. How many women have you used this method on? Rong Yuishinlin twirled the bamboo flute in his hand. This method is not for women to use. Other women may not have such an experience. I've only used it on you. Ji Xinyu. Then, I'm so honored. If other women were like me, what would you do? She didn't realize that there was a hint of jealousy in her words. Rong Yuishinlin replied casually, if other women were injured like this in front of me, I would probably watch her die. At most, I would give her an ice coffin. He wasn't a saint. He valued his chastity very much. Rong Yuishinlin felt that he was the best doctor to talk to. Most doctors had a few strange rules. For example, they had to kill one person and save another. For example, they had to give the most important thing in exchange. There were all kinds of strange conditions. However, he only saved people because he liked them. If he liked them, he would save them even if they paid him. If he didn't like them, he would kick them out even if they gave him a mountain of gold. Therefore, if other women had the same illness as Ji Xinyu, he would be kind enough to give them an ice coffin. Ji Xinyu didn't expect him to answer like this. Her heart skipped a beat and she blurted out, I don't believe you. He was willing to go through so much trouble to feed the woman in White's bird. If the woman in white was injured like this, he would be willing to sacrifice his life, let alone his chastity. Of course, after saying this, her heart tightened. What was wrong with her? She wasn't usually such a calculative person. Why was she arguing with him about this? Could it be that he was jealous? When this thought popped up, she stopped herself. Rong Yuishinlin didn't seem to expect her to say this. He looked at her and repeated, "You don't believe me?" Ji Xinyu finally came to her senses. She coughed and said, I just don't believe that my illness can only be treated with that method." Rong Yuetian looked at her for a moment and smiled. "Then you can take it that I did it on purpose." "What?" This time, it was Ji Xinyu's turn to be surprised. What she said just now was just to cover up her emotions. It wasn't that she didn't believe him. Although he liked to talk glibly in front of her, he still had a bottom line, and wouldn't take advantage of the opportunity to do such a thing. Rong Yuetian looked at her and said slowly, "I like you. If there's a chance to repay you with my body, I will naturally give it a try." Ji Xinyu was stunned by his shamelessness. You. Rong Yuetianlan squatted in front of her and looked at her sincerely. "Xinyu, you will take responsibility, right?" Ji Xinyu was shocked, speechless. What did you say? Responsible for what?" Rong Yuetian immediately looked hurt. "We're already like that. Don't tell me you're still not prepared to want me." The veins on Ji Shenyu's temples throbbed. But nothing happened. She finally managed to squeeze out an important word. "Your chastity is still intact." Although she was unconscious at that time. Chapter 2989. Although she was unconscious at that time, there was nothing wrong with her body, so nothing should have happened between them. She remembered hearing Rongyue Tianheng say that after doing that kind of thing, the man would feel good all over, while the woman's waist would be sore and weak. A good man could make the woman unable to get out of bed. Ji Xinyue did not feel anything wrong with her waist, so there should be nothing between them. Rongyue Tanlan looked at her with watery eyes. "How do you know that my chastity is still intact?" "You know quite a lot." Ji Xinyue snorted. "Of course, I've been in the pugilistic world for so many years. What don't I know? Your cousin told me before." She suddenly paused. Rongyue Tianlan secretly clenched his fists. It seemed that he had to find a way to separate her from Rongyue Tianheng in the future. That guy was too unreliable. He could easily lead his future wife astray. Because the topic had deviated, and even had a tendency to shift in a strange direction, Ji Xinyue decisively stopped and changed the topic. The bonfire in the ice cave was blazing, and it was as warm as spring. Ji Xinyue lay in the blanket. She felt that Rongyue Tianlan's sacrifice function was very powerful. After sweating all over, she felt much more relaxed. And even the injuries on her body did not hurt as much. The only drawback was that the duda she was wearing was already wet, and it stuck to her body uncomfortably. Besides, although he had gone out, she was still not confident enough to stay half naked in the blanket. She looked around, trying to find her clothes. But after looking for a long time, she did not see any. Needless to say, he had kept them in the storage space. She could only ask him, "Where are my clothes?" "I tore them when I was treating your injuries," Rongyue Tianlan answered straightforwardly. Ji Xinyue. She remembered the blue dress she was wearing when she woke up. At that time, he had put it on for her, but wanted to take it off for her. She did not know what he was thinking. She took a deep breath. "Then can you help me unseal my acupoints?" It was also convenient for her to take her clothes from her storage space. Although her clothes were not beautiful, they were practical. "No." Rongyue Tianlan refused and looked at her. "Your injuries are suitable for you to rest. It's not convenient for you to move around." Ji Xinyu took a deep breath and reasoned with him. "I won't move. I just want to put on some clothes." Rongyue Tian shook her head. "Putting on clothes requires a lot of body movements, which will affect the wound. Do you want me to wear it for you?" Ji Xinyu. "No need." Rangi Yuishinlin raised her hand and rubbed her sweaty hair. "That's a good girl. Now, you should obediently close your eyes and sleep. You're not allowed to forcefully circulate your power anymore." When he said this, his voice was gentle and magnetic, as if he was coaxing a child. Even his eyes were filled with affection. Ji Shenyu's heart skipped a beat, as if a small claw was scratching her heart. Her heart swelled up, and the corners of her eyes stung, as if she really was feeling wronged. Even she herself was shocked by her emotions. She realized that she might be a tough woman in front of others, but in front of Rongyue Tianlan, she was always easily aggrieved, like a little girl. She often had this feeling when she was a child, but after being abandoned and despised so many times, it gradually disappeared. She had always been good at hiding her emotions, so this time, she quickly collected her emotions and took a deep breath. Suddenly, she found the key point in his words. Chapter 2990. Can't force it? Are you saying that my power is still there? When she said the last few words, her voice trembled slightly. Rongyue Tianlan glanced at her and said, "Of course it's still there, but it was sealed by the icy qi at that time. With me here, how could I let you lose your telekinesis?" Ji Shenyue's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared on her lips. She blurted out, "Thank you." The heavy stone in her heart was finally removed, and her spirit instantly recovered a few notches, as if she had been injected with chicken blood. Rongyue Tianlan was not polite either. She leaned over and kissed her heavily on the cheek. Then, she slowly raised her head and looked at her angry eyes. "Every time you thank me, I have to ask for a thank you gift here. This is not too much, right?" Ji Shenyue was speechless. She gritted her teeth and squeezed out a few words. "It's not too much. Who would thank him in the future? If she thanked him again, she would be a pig." Humph. Rongyue Tianlan smiled like a flower blooming in spring, and rubbed her head with his palm. "You're so sensible." Ji Shenyue could not move, and could only stare at him with her eyes wide open. She was obviously angered by him. She finally stopped looking like a tomboy in front of him, and had the expression of a little girl. Rongyue Tianlan admired her expression for a while, and his heart skipped a beat. The more he looked at her, the more she looked like Ji Shenyue and Ji Tianyue were sisters after all. Although they had the same father but different mothers, there were still similarities in their appearance. It was just that the two of them usually had very different temperaments, so it was not easy to notice their similarities. It was only when she showed her girlish appearance that he realized that the two sisters were very similar. It was strange. Ji Tianyue was obviously the most similar to Ji Yu, but when she acted coquettishly in front of him, he only felt annoyed and did not have the slightest interest in appreciating her. Ji Shenyue was so angry that even though she was glaring at him, he felt that she was very cute. Waves of warmth spread out from his heart, and he wanted to hold her in his arms and protect her. Her hair was still wet. Although Rongyue Tian felt that her appearance was more seductive and flirtatious, she was also afraid that she would catch a cold again. She forcefully used her telekinesis to cast a cleaning spell on her body. Finally, her hair and body were refreshed, so that she no longer felt sticky all over. Rongyue Tianlan was really exhausted. After using the little cleaning spell, the tip of his nose was sweating. He wanted to use another one on himself, but he had no strength left. He simply stopped caring about it. Ji Shenyu finally realized that something was wrong with him. "Did you use up all of your psychokinesis?" She was slightly moved. It seemed like he was really going all out to save her. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes were filled with resentment as she looked at her with watery eyes. "Giving myself to you is also very exhausting." Ji Shenyu. Fine, she was touched again. Rongyue Tianlan teased her a few more times. Ji Shenyu knew that her words were clumsy, so she pursed her lips and ignored him. Rongyue Tianlan had actually been observing her complexion. Although her face was slightly pale, there were indeed signs of improvement. She should not faint again while he was meditating. Only then did he feel relieved. He raised his hand and rubbed her hair. "You should be good and rest first. I will meditate to recover. Remember to call me if there is anything wrong." Ji Shenyu had a headache. Could he not keep touching her? When she thought of reminding him, Rongyue Tianlan had already turned his back and started meditating. Chapter 2991. Ji Shenyu rested for a while and couldn't fall asleep. She opened her eyes and looked at him, Her heart skipped a beat. His sitting posture was unusually tall and straight. His back view was pleasing to the eye and made one's heart beat faster. His hair was still slightly damp, and his clothes were sticking to his body. It was obvious that he didn't have the strength to cast the cleansing spell on himself. This person was obsessed with cleanliness, but he was willing to make such a big sacrifice for her. Strange, from the first time she woke up, he was wearing this robe. The second time she woke up, he was still wearing this cool-looking robe. He didn't have any other clothes to change into? This couldn't be right. She remembered that he always had a variety of things in his storage space, so he should have spare clothes. He couldn't bear to change. Could it be that this robe was a gift from a confidant? Stop. Ji Xinyue felt that she couldn't let her imagination run wild anymore. It was not like her to be so suspicious. If she continued to make wild guesses, even she felt disgusted. She didn't know that women in love were the easiest to let their imagination run wild. The more they cared about someone, the easier it was for them to overthink. Especially when the relationship between the two parties wasn't very clear, it was easier for them to worry about gains and losses. Every frown, every smile, every word and action of the other party could be guessed at. Ji Xinyue wasn't a person who thought too much, but she had seen Rongyue Tianlan's interaction with some women. He liked to tease people. For example, when they first met, during the battle with the evil dragon, he had vaguely teased her. Of course, he also saved her. For example, when he got along with Ji Tianyue, he doted on Ji Tianyue and thought of everything. He taught her how to play chess, accompanied her on the streets, and even bought her so many little things to coax her. Another example was the scene in the Mirage. He didn't just dote on the woman in white spurred, therefore, in Ji Xinyue's impression, Rongyue Tianlan liked to protect people, especially girls. In that case, his kindness to her now might also be a form of protective mentality. As for his teasing, could she take it seriously? Ji Xinyue had been in the Jianghu for so many years, and knew many men. Among them, there was no lack of men who liked to tease girls. It was just to take advantage of them verbally. If you took it seriously, you would lose. Therefore, she couldn't be too serious about what she said to Rongyue Tianlan, lest she put herself in danger. Back then, she had sacrificed thousands of years of her reputation because of him. Now, if she were to sacrifice her heart as well, she would probably be consigned to eternal damnation. What's more, according to the rumors, Rongyue Tianlan had a sweetheart. Ji Tianyue almost became a substitute for his sweetheart. Now that he was suddenly chasing after her, who knew if he was treating her as a substitute for someone else? She was herself, and she didn't want to be anyone's replacement. Therefore, she could either treat his words as a breeze or ask him for confirmation. But would he tell the truth? Countless thoughts spun around in Ji Xinyue's mind, causing her head to hurt. She really wanted to raise her hand and knock on her head, but her acupoints were sealed, and she couldn't do so. She closed her eyes. Forget it. Now was not the time to think about it. That Huang Qinglu had ulterior motives. And his junior brother. Did Old Ninth really have another identity? Or did Huang Qinglu deliberately make it up to mess with her thoughts? Chapter 2992. If he really had another identity, then who could he be? This was the first time she had heard the name Xiejuk. This name was quite high-end, but she felt that it was more intimate to call him Xiefenglu. Huang Qinglu had manipulated Old Ninth to plot against her. What would he do next? Would he harm her sect? This last thought burned her like a fire. She felt that there was a big conspiracy behind this, but she could not guess it at the moment. She could not help but look at Rongyue Tianlan, who was meditating. In fact, she really wanted to ask him. After all, he was much older than her and knew more things. Perhaps he would know some inside information about Huang Qinglu. However, looking at the faint white light shining around him, she controlled herself and did not disturb him. He was meditating to recover. Not only could she not protect him, but she also wanted to disturb him. That would be too unkind. It was better to wait for him to recover before discussing this with him. Unable to move or circulate her qi, Ji Xinyue fell asleep in a daze. She had a dream. In her dream, she seemed to have returned to the Ziyun sect. She saw her eldest senior brother teaching his martial nephews, and her master sitting leisurely in a corner, basking in the sun. The Ziyun sect was quiet as usual. In her dream, she heaved a sigh of relief. Just as she was about to go forward and greet her master, she suddenly saw Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu appear together. After greeting her master, Xie Fenglu presented a shining pearl to her master. The pearl was the size of a fist and looked like a small moon. The Ziyun sect master was surprised. Moonlight pearl? You went to the Tianjing Ocean? In her dream, Ji Xinyue did not remember anything about the Tianjing Ocean. When she heard her master's words, her heart skipped a beat. She vaguely remembered what happened to her in the Tianjing Ocean. Her gaze fell on the pearl. So this was the moonlight pearl. After they killed her, they picked this pearl and brought it here? She did not know what to feel in her heart. Her eyes fell on Xie Fenglu again. Xie Fenglu's expression was normal. Other than being slightly haggard, there was nothing wrong with him. He was even as glib as before in front of her master to make her happy. Ji Xinyue looked at him in a daze. She did not know what to feel. Xie Fenglu had stabbed her and almost killed her. She knew that he had been manipulated by Huang Qinglu, so she did not blame him. Instead, she was worried about him. However, she had also seen Xie Fenglu's expression at that time. He had only been manipulated and had not lost his mind. He should have remembered stabbing her. He should have even seen her being sealed in the ice coffin by Huang Qinglu and sunk to the bottom. With his feelings for her, once he regained his mind, he should have been so guilty that he wanted to bang his head against the wall, right? But now he acted as if nothing had happened. He even plucked a moonlight pearl to please his master as usual. Ji Xinyue felt depressed. She had treated this brat with all her heart and soul. But this brat was actually an ingrate. He could still laugh so happily after stabbing her. Ji Xinyue had the urge to throw a punch at him and send him flying. Grandmaster Ziyin admired the pearl for a while, then suddenly asked Xie Fenglu, "Where is your senior sister? Isn't she always with you?" Xie Fenglu's expression froze. Then he smiled and said, "We were together a while ago. This pearl was also picked by me, her, and this brother Huang. But senior sister had something to do, so she asked her disciple to bring the pearl here first. She went somewhere else." Chapter 2993. Liar. He was lying. Ji Xinyue clenched her fists and couldn't help but rush over. "Ninth brother! You bastard!" She stumbled as she rushed over, and the scenery in front of her disappeared. She also shuddered and woke up from her dream. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Rong Yuishinlin looking at her with his chin in his hand. "Did you have a nightmare?" His handsome face was too close to her. According to Ji Xinyue's incomplete vision, it was only half a foot away. His breath was almost on her face. She subconsciously moved her head back. "Don't get so close." Her heart skipped a beat as soon as she woke up. Rong Yuishinlin was obedient. He sat up straight and asked her while twirling the bamboo flute in his hand, "Did you dream of Xie Fenglu?" Ji Xinyue's heart skipped a beat again. Was this guy a roundworm in her stomach? He guessed it right. But there was something else he guessed even more accurately. "Did you dream of him stabbing you with a sword again?" Ji Xinyue looked at him dumbfounded and blurted out, "How did you know?" Rong Yuishinlin twirled the bamboo flute with his fingertips and said casually, "I guessed it." His deductive ability was too strong. Ji Xinyue sincerely asked him where he got this deduction from. Rong Yuishinlin raised his eyebrows. "What's so difficult about that? The wound on your body was caused by a sneak attack from behind, and the shape of the wound was obviously a dagger from the hidden sword manner. You're very guarded against people. If it wasn't someone you completely trust, it would be impossible for them to sneak up on you and attack you from behind. There aren't many people you really trust, and there's only one person who meets this condition and has that kind of dagger. Who else could it be other than Xie Fenglu?" After hearing this, Ji Xinyue was completely convinced. She looked at Rongyue Tianlan. She really felt that this person who could make such a big name in the Fanning continent did not have an undeserved reputation. She really had some skills. "Can you guess why he stabbed me?" Ji Xinyue originally had the habit of keeping everything to herself, and thinking of ways to solve it. But now that Rong Yuishinlin was here, she couldn't help but want to discuss it with him. Rong Yuishinlin looked at her starry eyes and guessed. He was manipulated, right? He guessed right again. Ji Xinyu's eyes lit up even more. Go on. Rong Yuetian smiled. Do you still want me to guess who manipulated him? Ji Xinyu nodded. She did not believe that he would be able to deduce anything. Rong Yuishinlin spat out 3 words. Huang Qinglu. Ji Xinyu's eyes were filled with questions about how Rong Yuetian had deduced it. Rong Yuetian twirled a small strand of her hair around her finger and said, "This is actually not difficult to guess. This Huang Qinglu's martial arts are not low. He obviously concealed his true identity to get along with your martial siblings. Especially your precious martial brother. He has been following you very closely. Your junior brother's attitude towards him is also a little strange, as if they have known each other for a long time. I even loathed him, but I couldn't shake him off. The 2 of them were practically inseparable in the sword manner, so I took a few more glances at him. This time, he must have followed you guys to gather pearls. Xie Fenglu was controlled to stab you, so the mastermind behind this can only be him." At that time in the sword manner, Rong Yuishinlin felt that this Huang Qinglu was not simple. His name was unknown, but his martial arts were unfathomable. Because Huang Qinglu had been pestering Xie Fenglu and looked like a homosexual, Rong Yuishinlin did not think much of it at that time. He even wanted to investigate this person's background when he was free. Chapter 2994. Therefore, Rong Yuishinlin didn't think too much about it and wanted to investigate this person's background. However, he didn't expect that before he could investigate this matter, Ji Xinyue would be the first to be plotted against by him. She had almost lost her life. No matter how unconvinced Ji Xinyue was, she had no choice but to submit to Rong Yuishinlin. She pursed her lips and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Then, have you figured out his true identity now? Rong Yuishinlin paused for a moment and raised his hand to ruffle her hair. No matter what his true identity is, I will naturally avenge you. I won't let him off so easily. His tone was faint, but there was a bone-chilling coldness hidden in it. He didn't care if Huang Qinglu had other schemes, but since he hurt his people, he naturally had to make him pay with his blood. Ji Xinyue's heart warmed. In the past she always stood up for her people, but now, she seemed to be protected under his wings. The feeling of being protected was always warm, but Ji Xinyue still wanted to take revenge herself. She had to figure out Huang Qinglu's purpose for doing this. He couldn't really be jealous, right? Exalted immortal Rongyu, have you heard of Xie? Rong Yuishinlin's fingers that were holding the bamboo flute paused. He pondered for a moment. I've heard of him. Why are you asking about him? He was very meticulous. Is Xie related to Xie Fenglu? Is Xie Fenglu his descendant? Ji Xinyue's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that there really was such a person as Xie. However, she didn't want to tell Rong Yuishinlin what she had heard for the time being. She only vaguely replied, I don't know if he's his descendant, but I heard them mention this person. Who is this Xie? Rong Yuishinlin turned the bamboo flute and glanced at her. He explained to her, I know that 30,000 years ago, there was a devil ancestor called Xie in the devil race. He led the devil race to cause a bloody storm in the Sanyin continent. Later, he was annihilated by the 4 races and the various cultivation sections. I heard that his ending was that his soul was scattered. Before he died, he cursed that he would return sooner or later, and that he would pay with his blood. Rong Yuishinlin spoke calmly, but Ji Xinyue shuddered. If what Huang Qinglu said was true, then Xie Fengliu's predecessor was a great devil. It can't be. Although that brat was occasionally unreliable, he was still relatively benevolent and had a bottom line. How could he be a great devil? Maybe they have the same name? That's not right. That Huang Qinglu kept saying that she wanted him to awaken, or something. She was still a little indignant, and could not help but ask, what does Xie look like? Tell me more about him. Rong Yuishinlin glanced at her again. I don't know much about him. It's said that he suddenly appeared back then. Not long after he appeared, he used thunderous means to subdue the devil race who were in a state of disunity. Then, he led the devil race troops everywhere to seize territory. Wherever he went he burned, killed, and plundered. It is said that he wears a ferocious ghost mask all year round. No one knows his true face, not even his guards have seen it. Ji Xinyu couldn't help but ask, wasn't he surrounded and killed? Someone must have seen him die, right? Rangi Yuishinlin shook her head. It was not easy to encircle and annihilate him. The immortals had also paid a considerable price. Moreover, he was refined alive by the immortals with the true samadhi fire. When he died, he was directly refined into ashes. Ji Xinyu was speechless. She paused. Then, was there anyone with the surname Huang by his side at that time? Chapter 2995. After the incident, she pondered over Huang Qingliu's attitude towards Xie Fenglu. She had a feeling that Huang Qingliu was once Xie Fengliu's subordinate. Rangi Yuishinlin glanced at her again and shook his head. There is no one with the surname Huang among the famous generals by his side. The name Huang Qingliu is a complete alias. The name is fake, and so is the surname. Ji Xinyu was stunned for a moment. She frowned and did not speak. Rangi Yuishinlin looked at her with a rare serious expression. Xinyu, you still don't believe me? Ji Xinyu was stunned. Why do you say that? Rangi Yuishinlin said, you're hiding something from me. Xie Fenglu might be Xiejuk, right? Ji Xinyu was speechless. Where did he deduce that from? Rangi Yuishinlin looked at her. I think you should tell me everything you know. This is no small matter. It's best if we discuss everything we know with each other. Only then can we confirm some things. Don't worry, without your consent, I won't harm your junior brother. Ji Xinyue's misgivings were exposed. She took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. She finally told him the whole process of her operation. Of course, she did not mention the mirage. After all, it had nothing to do with the main plot. Rangi Yuishinlin frowned slightly. After pondering for a while, he finally said slowly, Shenyue, Xie Fenglu is most likely Xie Juk's reincarnation. Or rather, he is not a reincarnation at all, but an avatar. Ji Xinyue's heart sank. How can you be so sure? Rangi Yuishinlin finally told her everything he knew and deduced. 30,000 years ago, although Xie Juk did not have a trusted aide with the surname Huang, he had a Sharkman's military advisor named Huang Luqing. This military advisor was omnipotent and knew how to do anything. He had given Xie Juk many ideas and cleaned up a lot of messes. He had even been Xie Juk's substitute and used some strange martial arts, making it even harder for people to guess Xie Juk's origins. This Huang Luqing had hidden himself even deeper. Not many people from the devil race had really seen him, because this person was extremely low-key. Almost no one from the celestial race had heard of his name. Therefore, when they surrounded the devil race, they let this person escape. Later, they captured some of the high-ranking generals of the demon race. Under torture, these people gave up Huang Luqing. It was said that after Xie Juk died, the immortal world had once searched for Huang Luqing in the 6 realms. However, there was too little information about him, and no one knew what he looked like. Therefore, after searching for hundreds of years, they still couldn't find anything. Because Huang Luqing had never made an appearance again, everyone guessed that he might have died during the tribulation. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat. Huang Qingliu, Huang Luqing. The names were really similar. However, wasn't it too hasty to determine their identities based on this point? Rong Yuetian seemed to understand the doubts in her heart. Legend has it that Huang Luqing is a snow shark, and the hometown of the snow shark is this extreme North Sea region. Also, the ruins of N Vortex that he created, and the ice shell that sealed you were rumored to have been used by Xie Juk back then. They were his secret ultimate moves that he didn't use easily. You also know that Huang Luqing once pretended to be Xie Juk and used his martial arts. So these martial arts are Huang Luqing's. I've already checked the ice shell at the bottom of the water. There's a special incantation on it by Sharkmen. Even your divine sword can't cut it open. Ji Xinyu's heart was in a mess. Chapter 2996. Ji Xinyue's heart was in a mess. If Huang Qinglu was Huang Luqing, then her junior brother was probably Xiejuk. What would he do if he awakened and recovered his memories from his previous life? Thinking of this, she couldn't lie down any longer. She immediately wanted to get up. At this moment, the acupuncture points on her body had been unsealed, and she had regained her ability to move. However, just as she sat up, Rongyi Yuishinlin placed a palm on her shoulder. Don't worry, even if you find them now, you can't do anything. Recover your power first. Ji Xinyue naturally knew that she couldn't do anything with her current power. She didn't even have the strength to ride the cloud back. However, if Xie Fenglu really awakened as Xiejuk, it would bring a catastrophe to the Fanning continent. She searched her body again and again, and a hand reached out in front of her. A voice transmission talisman lay in the palm of her hand. Are you looking for this? Ji Xinyue hurriedly nodded. That voice transmission talisman was the one she used to contact her master. She was still puzzled. Why do you have my voice transmission talisman? It was in your original sleeve. That sleeve has been lost. Rongyi Yuishinlin conjured a pile of small items from her body like a magic trick. Here, you didn't lose anything. It's all here. Those small items were commonly used by girls. There were even two strange-looking strips of cloth. Ji Xinyue's pretty face flushed red again. She hurriedly put those things away, and then opened the voice transmission talisman to contact her master. The call was quickly connected, and Sect Master Zi Yun's lazy voice came through. Little 8, you finally remembered your master. Sect Master Zi Yun only called her Little 8 when he was in a bad mood. Nothing good would come out of it every time he called her that. Originally, when Ji Xinyue heard these two words, the veins on her forehead would bulge, and her heart would be raised high. She didn't know what new tricks her master was going to play with her. Now she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Hearing her master's leisurely voice, there naturally wasn't any accident. She greeted her master obsequiously, and said a lot of things to calm her master down. Rongyi Yuishinlin sat at the side, and watched her talk to her master. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Ji Xinyue asked her master about some things. From her master, she knew that Xie Fenglu hadn't returned yet, and the Ziyan sect was peaceful. She heaved a sigh of relief. After thinking for a while, she couldn't help but remind him. Master, is there any movement from the devil sect? I vaguely heard news of the devil ancestor Xiejuk reviving, but I don't know whether it's true or not. Master, should we be on guard against this? Sect Master Zi Yun's master asked Xie Ji Xinyue Xie's soul? He's reincarnated revived? Is this news true? So her master also know this devil. There's master's master. There's A's heart's masters. Master Zi Yun. Sect Master Zi Yun laughed. That devil is an ancient devil, much older than master. Even if he revives, he will still be old and dim-sighted. He won't be able to create any waves. Don't worry. Obviously, he didn't take Ji Xinyue's advice to heart. Ji Xinyue steeled her heart and said, Master, if he revives, he might be a newcomer. Maybe someone with ability will awaken, or someone around you, such as one of your disciples. They might not know their identity before, but they suddenly awakened. I don't know what they will do after awakening as Xiejuk. In short, master must be careful. Chapter 2997. The master and disciple chatted for a while more before Ji Xinyue closed the sound transmission talisman. Connecting the sound transmission talisman took a bit of telekinesis, so Ji Xinyue was a little out of breath after speaking. Rongyi Yuishinlin calmly pressed his hand on her back and helped her smooth out her meridians. Why didn't you tell your master directly? Ji Xinyue bit her lip. After all, it's not completely confirmed yet. She wanted to remind her master to be on guard against Xie Fenglu, but she thought that if Huang Qinglu had mistaken him for someone else, and Xie Fenglu was not Xiejuk, wouldn't that be a big mistake? It would also cause 10,000 points of damage to her sensitive junior brother. Rongyi Yuishinlin did not say anything else. He turned to her and held her hand, placing his palm against hers. Come, I'll help you check your qi and blood first. This way you can recover faster. Ji Shunyue looked at his lowered eyebrows and understood that he understood her scruples. She also knew that he understood her eagerness to go back. He was extraordinarily considerate and understanding. The woman who could marry him was really lucky. Don't worry too much. Even if he awakens, it will take a long time for him to recover to his previous level. There won't be any problems for the time being. Calm down and don't let your imagination run wild. Rongyu Ishinlin sensed her absent-mindedness and comforted her. Ji Shunyue blushed and nodded. Rongyu Ishinlin's gaze fell on her face. He half-jokingly asked, "Why are you blushing? Could it be that you were distracted because of me?" Ji Shunyue blushed even harder, but she glared at him fiercely. "Don't be narcissistic, I wasn't thinking of you." This sentence, coupled with her burning face, was simply a synonym for 300 tales of silver hidden here. Rongyu Ishinlin looked at her red face and smiled slightly. "Let me guess what you were thinking of me. Is it that the woman who wants to marry me is very lucky?" Ji Shunyue's hand trembled and her eyes widened. "You, how did you know?" She almost blurted out the words, but fortunately she stopped in time. Rongyu Ishinlin suddenly leaned close to her and planted a kiss on her eyelashes, then calmly left. "You what? Do you think I'm quite smart?" Ji Shunyue paused for a moment, then finally gave him a sincere evaluation. "You're quite thick-skinned." The two of them chatted and laughed for a while, and the relaxed atmosphere finally relaxed Ji Shunyue's tense nerves. Rong Yuetian also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If she was tense and impatient, it would take twice the effort to heal her, and it would not be beneficial for her later recovery. The two stayed in the ice cave for a total of 5 days. With Rong Yuetianlan, the godly doctor, by her side, Ji Shunyue's injuries healed very quickly. Of course, later on, when Ji Shunyue was meditating to heal herself, Rong Yuetianlan also took the opportunity to meditate and recover. In addition, the moon god sword could catch fish, so they did not have to worry about food, and the two of them got along very well. Ji Shunyue's injuries this time were not ordinary injuries. Even if she recovered quickly, it would still take half a month to fully recover. However, Ji Shunyue could not wait. She was afraid that something would happen to the sect during this period of time. So she contacted the people of the Purple Cloud sect almost every day. She did not dare to contact her master often, in case he became suspicious. So she contacted her eldest senior brother, Feng Wuji, the most. Fortunately, she heard from Feng Wuji that the Purple Cloud sect had been peaceful, and even the entire Fanning continent was peaceful, so she was slightly relieved. 5 days later, Ji Shunyue's external injuries had basically healed. Chapter 2998. 5 days later, Ji Shunyue's external injuries had basically healed, and her skills had recovered a little. After all, she couldn't stay calm and wanted to go back. Rong Yuishinlin knew that she was anxious. In addition, there were frequent strong winds and huge waves in this damned place. Icebergs were destroyed one after another, and the moon god sword dug one hole after another. It was very troublesome. Therefore, after he recovered about 2/3 of his skills, he simply brought her back to the central plains. Blue sky, white clouds, a bright sun, and a cool breeze. Ji Shunyue didn't know how many times she had flown on clouds in her life, but this was the first time she was standing on a cloud controlled by someone else. The cloud wasn't big, only about the size of a small boat. Standing at the top of the cloud was Rong Yuishinlin. Ji Shunyue stood behind him, watching the surrounding clouds fly past them. There was a sense of contentment, but also a sense of unreality. Her skills had only recovered about 1/10, and she could barely ride a cloud. Rong Yuishinlin didn't want her to waste the little bit of telekinesis that she had painstakingly cultivated, so he carried her without any explanation. The cold wind whistled outside, and the wind cut like knives. However, the cloud was peaceful, and the wind was not cold. It blew until Ji Shunyue's heart seemed to soften, and she temporarily forgot about Xiejik's troublesome matter. Rong Yuishinlin's back was facing her, and his figure was tall and straight. Ji Shunyue suddenly had an impulse to hug his waist. Fortunately, she suppressed this impulse in time, and raised her hand to knock between her eyebrows. What's wrong with me these few days? Rong Yuishenlin seemed to have noticed her actions and asked, What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? How was she not feeling well? She was extremely comfortable. Ji Xinyue shook her head decisively. No, I'm fine. By the way, Supreme Immortal Rongyu. The cloud under her suddenly shook. Ji Xinyue's body leaned and almost fell on him. She quickly steadied herself. What's wrong? Rong Yuishenlin finally turned around and looked at her with a faint smile. What did you call me? Ji Xinyu herself was also quite puzzled. Normally, when she was familiar with people, she would call them by their nickname or directly call them by their last two words. For example, Rongyu, Tianheng. When she was in a good mood, she would also call him Tianheng. However, even though he was already so familiar with Rongyue Tianlan, she still didn't call him Tianlan. If she wasn't calling him Supreme Deity Rongyue, she would call him Her Highness Rongyue. Occasionally when she was angry, she would call him by his full name. Rongyu Tianlan didn't mind at first. He felt that after getting along with her for a long time, she would get rid of this bad habit and call him by his name. Although he was no longer her fiancé, they had been through thick and thin together so many times. He was also pursuing her again, so their relationship should be very close, right? At the very least, it was closer than Rongyue Tianheng and the others, right? But she refused to change. It seemed that calling him by those distant names had become a habit. At this moment, Rongyue Tianlan was looking at her. Her eyelashes were slightly curved as if she was teasing her. However, there seemed to be a dark river surging in the depths of her eyes, surging silently. Ji Xinyue's heart skipped a beat when he looked at her like this. She pretended to be confused. Supreme Deity Rongyu, you are the only supreme deity in the Fanning continent. Just as she said this, the cloud under her suddenly paused. Ji Xinyue was caught off guard. Her body was thrown forward by inertia and landed on his back. Her hands subconsciously hugged his waist tightly. Although Rongyue Tianlan had been healing her these past few days, it was only palm-to-palm contact. There was no physical contact. Chapter 2999. Now that she was hugging his thin and warm waist, her mind went blank, and she quickly let go. After she steadied herself, she said angrily, What are you doing? She shouted these words fiercely, but just as she finished shouting, her waist was hooked, and she fell back into the other party's warm embrace. Before she could completely react, her little mouth was covered by someone's lips. Using his lips, her mind went blank again, and her blood rushed to the top of her head. Her heart seemed to be going on strike, and skipped more than 1 or 2 beats. His lips were warm. When he kissed her lips, he was gentle and strong. Her mind went blank, and she almost forgot to react. He took advantage of the situation and kissed her thoroughly. His lips and tongue swept through her mouth. Their breaths intertwined, and even the air around them seemed to heat up. He held her body tighter and tighter, and his body became hotter and hotter. Ji Shenyu finally reacted when she felt something pressing against her lower abdomen. What was she doing? She was actually being kissed by him. She instinctively pushed him away. She used a little too much strength, and this slap almost pushed him down from the clouds. The cloud under her feet also swayed, as if it could not bear the weight. Fortunately, the two of them finally separated. Ji Shenyu's heart was beating like a drum. She glared at him and said, You, lecher. He actually kissed her on the cloud without any warning. Rongyu Ishinlin took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He smiled and said something that deserved a beating. Just call me by my name in the future. If you call me God or Your Highness again, I'll punish you with this. Ji Shenyu was speechless. She gritted her teeth and threatened him. If you dare to do this again, I'll kick you away. Rongyu Ishinlin smiled. Well, if you have the ability, feel free to kick me. He did not intend to let her go. Come, call me by my name. Ji Shenyu snorted and turned around. She would call him just because he asked her to? How immoral. Rongyu Ishinlin's eyes flashed. The cloud under her feet suddenly sped up and slowed down. Ji Shenyu's body swayed and she fell forward. Rongyu Ishinlin hooked her with his arm and pulled her into his arms. He looked into her eyes and said, Be good, call me once. This guy was addicted to playing with her. Ji Shenyu was so angry that she raised her foot and stepped on him. I won't scream. She used a lot of strength to step on him. But because both of them were stepping on soft clouds, this foot could not really step on solid ground at all. Rong Yuishenlin held her in his arms and looked at her blushing face and her round and bright eyes. What to do? He wanted to kiss her again. Ji Shenyu knew what he was going to do when she saw his expression. She was afraid that he would admit defeat without warning and kiss her again. She called out to him. Rongyue Tianlan, that's enough. Her palm was still pressing on his lips. Her palms were actually quite delicate, but because she was too hard-working in martial arts and wielded a broadsword, there were some calluses on her palms. At this moment, those calluses were in the middle of his lips, rubbing against his lips. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes darkened, and she took the opportunity to kiss her palm. That ticklish feeling directly numbed her heart. Ji Shenyu did not withdraw her hand, but Rongyue Tianlan had already said calmly, Don't call me by my full name, it's too distant. He smiled again. Do you still want me to kiss you? So you're deliberately not screaming? Chapter 3000. Ji Shenyu was about to be defeated by his shamelessness, and could only give in. Tianlan, this should be enough, right? Rongyi Yuishenlin sighed. You're so unwilling, it hurts me. He still had no intention of letting her go. Ji Shenyu wanted to kick him away. What else do you want? Rongyi Yuishenlin smiled. You should be able to kiss me. Ji Shenyu did not hold back this time. She had been imprisoned in Rongyu Tianlan's arms all this time. He was strong, and she had not recovered her strength yet. Naturally, she could not break free with brute force. Her eyes flashed, and she suddenly raised her leg to block. This was a woman's self-defense technique. Her movements were as fast as lightning. Even if she could not really hit him, it was enough to make him let go. Bang! She hit the bullseye. Rongyi Yuishenlin finally let go. Not only did he let go, but he also trembled and fell from the clouds. Ji Shenyu was stunned. By the time she reacted, he had already rolled down. She wouldn't knock him out, would she? He would die if he fell from such a high place. Almost without thinking, she jumped down as well. She used her telekinesis to fall faster than him. She quickly caught up with him and subconsciously pulled him. But with her current strength, how could she pull him down? The two of them rolled down together. Fortunately, the two of them were not ordinary people. Ji Shenyu tried her best to adjust her body while rolling. Together with her telekinesis, she finally reduced the impact of the fall. Seeing the dark ground coming towards them, Ji Shenyu hugged him and turned around in the air so that her back was facing down. Then, she closed her eyes and prepared to fall hard. Naturally, she was also prepared to be his meat cushion. Rongyi Yuishenlin, who was in her arms, suddenly moved, and the two of them switched positions in an instant. Uff! The two of them fell into a pit, and mud flew up. In a mountain forest beside a stream, Rongyi Yuishenlin sat there, his face pale, and his forehead was covered in layers of cold sweat. His blue robe was stained with mud, and at this moment, it was almost like a robe. Ji Shenyu stood helplessly beside him. After all, he was the one who acted as a meat cushion in the end, so Ji Shenyu didn't fall much, and could still stand there perfectly fine. She looked at the cold sweat rolling down his forehead. She did not expect that her head would have such serious consequences. She felt very guilty. Are you okay? She actually didn't think that she would be able to hit him. After all, this person's kung fu was extremely high, and his reaction was extraordinarily fast. Who would have thought that he would be hit? Even more so, he didn't think that it would cause such serious consequences. Rong Yuetian closed her eyes slightly and replied with 2 words, I'm fine. She adjusted her breathing and meditated. Ji Shenyu couldn't help but speak up. Rongyue Tianlan, you and I are no longer engaged. You shouldn't keep touching me. Rongyue Tian didn't open her eyes, but she still answered her with a few words. I won't do it again. Ji Shenyu. She paused for a moment and then said dryly, That's good. You rest and recover first. I'll guard you. Rongyue Tian didn't say anything this time, and directly entered a state of adjustment. Although there were many wild beasts in this mountain forest, there weren't any large beasts. At most there was a wild dog. Without waiting for Ji Xinyue to make a move, the moon god sword only flashed its blade for a moment, and the wild dog disappeared without a trace. Chapter 3001. Therefore, Ji Xinyue had an easy time as a guard. Rongyue Tianlan meditated for a long time this time, an entire day. When he opened his eyes again, it was already noon of the second day. When he opened his eyes, he smelled the aroma of meat. He turned to look. Ji Xinyue had already roasted a wild goat not far away, and was waiting for him. When she saw him open his eyes, she waved at him. "Are you hungry? I roasted a goat, try it and see how it tastes." Rongyue Tianlan walked over slowly, and Ji Xinyue handed him a goat leg. The skin of the goat leg was roasted to a golden brown, and it was still fragrant with oil. It must have taken her some effort. Rongyue Tianlan did not take the goat leg. He shook his head. "I'm not hungry, you can eat it yourself." He strode forward along the stream. Ji Xinyue's hand, which was holding the goat leg, froze in midair. After a while, she retracted her hand. Seeing that his figure was about to turn the corner, she could not help but ask, "Where are you going?" "To take a bath." Rongyue Tianlan answered with 3 words, and his figure disappeared. Ji Xinyue sat down. She knew that there was a pool at the end of the stream, and it was a good place to take a bath. When he landed, he was covered in dirt, so he should take a bath. However, he had the cleansing spell, so why didn't he use it? Perhaps he was afraid of wasting his telekinesis? Ji Xinyue gnawed on the goat leg by herself. She originally thought that the goat leg she roasted this time was the pinnacle of her culinary skills, and it was extremely delicious, but now she felt a little sick of it. The more she ate, the harder it was to swallow. "He's angry, isn't he?" Yu Shin's sword began to whisper in her mind. Ji Xinyu stood up and stopped eating, ignoring the 8 trigram sword. "I heard that place is a man's lifeblood, and it can kill him." Yu Shin's sword continued to gossip about men. Only ordinary men would be like that, right? He was a supreme immortal. Shouldn't he have an indestructible body, and not be afraid of being cut and chopped anywhere? Moreover, she only used her knee to hit him. Although she thought so, Ji Xinyue still felt a little nervous. She couldn't have really hurt him, right? According to what she heard from her friends in the martial world, if a man was hit in that place, he might not be able to do it. Ji Xinyu's heart was also filled with anger, but at the same time, she couldn't get rid of the guilt she felt. She almost wanted to jump up and run to the side of the pond to take a look. Fortunately, she braked in time and stopped after taking 2 steps. Why would she go there now? To watch him bathe? Rongyue Tianlan's bath was a little long, and she still hadn't returned after half a day. Ji Xinyu was a little uneasy. Would he drown in the pool because of his injuries? She steeled her heart, and was about to run over to take a look when Rongyue Tianlan finally came out from that side. Ji Xinyu heaved a sigh of relief, and sat down again. She looked at him, and saw that not only had he taken a bath, he had also washed his clothes. His blue robe had returned to its usual dry and clean state. His face was still slightly pale, and there was even a faint trace of weariness between his brows. However, as his clothes fluttered as he walked, there was still a kind of clear and neat ink landscape. "Why did you take so long?" Ji Xinyu couldn't help but ask. Rongyue Tianlan paused for a moment. Her expression was slightly indifferent. "It's too dirty, so I washed it for a while longer." It was rare for him to be so dirty. Before he took a shower, there was a layer of dirt on his hair. Ji Xinyu nodded. "I see." A breeze blew between the 2 of them, one sitting and one standing. Neither of them spoke for a while. Chapter 3002. Ji Xinyue even felt a little awkward. At the same time, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. When he was aggressive and passionate towards her, she couldn't wait to kick him far away. But when he was really cold and polite to her, she felt uncomfortable, and even vaguely felt wronged in her heart. Even she herself didn't know where this grievance came from. Her heart felt as if it was wrapped by a string, and there was an indescribable sourness in it. It was Rongyue Tianlan who broke the awkwardness. He looked at her and said, Aren't you going to wash up? Ji Shenhua was very busy just now. She was protecting him and roasting the lamb. Even after washing her hands and face by the stream, there was still a lot of dirt on her body. Now that she was reminded by Rongyue Tianlan, she instantly felt uncomfortable. She wanted to use a cleansing spell, but her power had not recovered to that extent yet. However, she felt pressured to bathe in the wilderness. Although this place was in the wilderness, it was not a particularly uninhabited place. When she was roasting the lamb just now, Ji Shenhua even saw a hunter passing by in the distance. Rongyue Tianlan seemed to see her apprehension and said, "It's okay. Don't worry and go wash up. I'll protect you." Seeing that Ji Shenhua had no intention of moving, he raised the corner of his lips and said with a faint smile, "Are you afraid that I'll peek? Don't worry, I won't do such a tasteless thing." Ji Shenhua went to bathe in the end. She also thought it through. Her body had already been seen and touched by Rongyue Tianlan. Why should she be shy about this matter now? Besides, with his character, he probably wouldn't peek. Even if he wanted to look, he would most likely look at them with a smile on his face, and not hide in some corner to peek at them vulgarly. The water in the pool was cold. Ji Shenhua soaked in it and quickly washed up. After all, she was in the wilderness. She didn't dare to strip completely. She still had her underwear on. She was afraid that Rongyue Tianlan would appear from somewhere and watch her bathe with his arms crossed with a smile. So she soaked everything below her neck in the water. However, she was obviously thinking too much. Rongyue Tianlan actually acted like a gentleman. He sat on a rock not far from the pool. From this position he could hear everything around him. However, because of the big rock, he couldn't see the spring scene in the pool. He sat there and meditated with his eyes closed. He had no intention of sneaking a peek. The moon god sword circled around him. "Are you alright?" Seeing that Rongyue Tianlan didn't speak, it asked with concern. "You wouldn't have been crippled by that, right?" The blue veins on Rongyue Tianlan's forehead jumped. She clenched her fingers and looked at it coldly. "Do you want to be crippled?" The moon god's sword trembled, and did not plan to speak with him anymore. It turned the sword tip and wanted to fly away. However, the sword hilt was held by someone else. Rongyue Tianlan's voice was cold. "You're not allowed to go." Moon god's sword was not convinced. "She is my master. I should be by her side protecting her." Rongyue Tianlan immediately pulled it back. "No." Moon god's sword was extremely puzzled. "Why? She's taking a bath. Why are you butting in? It can't be right. Even it was not allowed to see its master." "I'm just a sword. Furthermore, it's a female sword." Moon god's sword almost stomped her feet. "But you have the heart of a man." Rongyue Tianlan did not let go of it. "You want to be an open and above-board sword. Why are you being so wretched?" Moon god's sword. When was it not open and above-board? Chapter 3003. When they set off again, it was already the morning of the next day. After 2 days of rest, Ji Shenhua was able to ride a cloud again. In order to avoid repeating the same mistake, she suggested that the two of them ride separately. However, Rongyue Tianlan directly lifted her onto her own cloud. When she flew into the sky, she even gave her a reassuring pill. "Don't worry, without your consent, I won't do anything to you again." He recovered faster than her, and his skills were originally higher than hers. Ji Shenhua didn't want to argue with him on the cloud, so she agreed. Rongyue Tianlan was a man of his word. He didn't touch her again along the way, not even the slightest bit of physical contact. Even when he gave her the medicine she was supposed to take, he didn't hand it over, but threw it over. Seeing him suddenly become serious, Ji Shenhua breathed a sigh of relief, but the strange feeling of being wronged surfaced in her heart again. She had never really loved someone in her life, so she didn't know what it was like to love someone. Now this indescribable feeling made her feel a little lost and anxious. She was like a little tiger that fell into a kaleidoscope. She was a little dazzled and scared, but she had to stretch out her little paws and pretend to be strong. It seemed that Rongyue Tianlan had completely recovered after a day and night of rest. His cloud ride was fast and steady. He kept facing forward, and if there was nothing, he wouldn't talk to Ji Shenhua anymore. He was very serious. Ji Shenyue simply sat on his cloud and meditated. She didn't notice the passage of time while meditating. When she opened her eyes, she found that there was a sea in front of her, and there were waves surging on the surface of the sea. Ji Shenyue was surprised and stood up. Where is this? Didn't she ask him to send her back to the Xian sect? She remembered that the way back to the Xian sect wouldn't pass by any sea. Why were they at the seaside now? She looked at the sky. The sunset was full, and the sun was hanging on the horizon like a half-melted egg yolk. She still had a sense of time. She knew that she should have meditated for about a day. According to Rongyue Tianlan's speed, they should be reaching the Xian sect by now. Where I'm staying temporarily, Rongyue Tianlan replied. Ji Shenyue's eyes widened. What are we doing here? Didn't we agree to go to the Xian sect? Right now, she was most concerned about her sect. She was afraid that a disaster would befall her sect. Rongyue Tian looked at her and said, Let me ask you, if your Xian sect is really in trouble, can you stop it with your current kung fu? Ji Shenyue was speechless. She had only recovered a fifth of her power, so she could at most beat Xie Fenglu. But if he really turned into a devil, it would be hard to say. What's more, there was also Huang Qinglu, whose strength she didn't know. She took a deep breath. I might not be able to defeat him, but I can warn Master and Senior Martial Brothers. If you just want to remind me, you can use the sound transmission talisman. Rongyu Ishinlin cut her off, and a sound-transmitting talisman appeared in her palm. Do you want to tell your master the truth now? Ji Shenyu. Her pretty face turned slightly pale. Master hated the people of the devil sect to the core. Once he knew that Little Nine might be the reincarnation of the devil sect's devil ancestor, he would probably clean up the sect immediately. He didn't even give Little Nine a chance to defend himself. What if Little Nine wasn't that devil ancestor? Wouldn't they have sacrificed themselves for nothing? Rongyu Ishinlin looked at her for a moment, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. She said faintly, You still can't bear it, right? In that case, what's the use of you going back? Chapter 3004. Anger surged in Ji Shenyue's heart. At least I can see some clues. I'll make a decision after seeing them clearly. She always felt that it would be better if she stayed in Xian sect. Wasn't this the reason why she was in a hurry to come back before her injuries had healed? Rongyu Ishinlin said, If Xie Fenglu really does harm to your sect after awakening, you won't be able to stop him with your current ability. What you should do now is to quickly recover all your telekinesis. Only with true strength can you play a more important role, right? Ji Shenyue took a deep breath. I also want to quickly recover my telekinesis, but this can't be done overnight. If you want to recover quickly, go to my residence. My place has the most abundant spiritual energy and a complete set of medicine. It's very beneficial for your quick recovery. At this point, Ji Shenyue couldn't refute. After a pause, she asked, How long will it take to recover in your residence? Rongyu Ishinlin had already begun to draw a spell in the air with both hands. She replied, It depends on your comprehension and ability. Ji Shenyue was speechless. It was just recovering one's power. What did it have to do with comprehension and ability? Was this girl tricking her? Just as she finished thinking, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of her. Ji Shenyue was already somewhat sensitive to whirlpools. She subconsciously wanted to retreat, but Rongyu Ishinlin grabbed her and jumped directly into the whirlpool with her. Don't be afraid, this whirlpool won't harm you. These were the words Rongyu Ishinlin said when she hugged her in the whirlpool. A silver-white beach, tall tropical coconut trees. A bluestone staircase wound upwards, leading straight into the depths of the forest. Under the shade of the green trees, there were pavilions and towers embellished with white cranes flying in the air. It was a peaceful and auspicious scene. A cool breeze blew gently, warming one's body. Ji Shenyue looked at everything in front of her in a daze. This place was too otherworldly. She didn't expect him to have such a nest. After getting out of the whirlpool, the two of them landed on the ground. Rongyu Ishinlin let go of her and looked at her with a smile. How do you feel about this place? Ji Shenyue nodded. It's your style. This place was fresh and elegant. The scenery changed with every step, and every blade of grass, every tree, every mountain, and every rock was ingenious. Even before entering the interior, it gave one an extremely comfortable feeling. She looked at the pavilions in the distance. Some were small, some were elegant, and some were majestic. Every single one of them had its own style. But when these styles were put together, they gave off an extremely harmonious feeling. Someone who was not ambitious would never be able to create such a scene. She thought of the place where she lived in seclusion and built a few thatched huts. They were both living in seclusion, but why was there such a huge difference? It was said that girls liked to tidy up the little nest they lived in beautifully. It was so warm that men couldn't bear to leave. However, she seemed to be the opposite of him. She had always been carefree in this aspect. Her requirements for the nest were that it could be lived in, and that it would not be disturbed. On the other hand, he strived for perfection. He had only returned to this continent for a few months, but the place he had built in a hurry was already so stylish. In fact, this place was discovered and set up by Rong Yuetian more than 3,000 years ago. After he left this continent, he also opened up a similar place in the Tianxi continent. Of course, after many years of operation and occasional pointers from Shenjuli, that place was much more exquisite and perfect than this one. After he returned here, he renovated it again. Chapter 3005. Of course, nothing was exactly the same in this world, and Rong Yue Tianlan didn't want to completely replicate the previous one, so he arranged it according to local conditions. The living environment of this continent was actually better than that of the Tianxi continent, and the spiritual force was also more abundant. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many cultivators here. And this place was the spirit eye of the Fanning continent, so the spiritual force was extraordinarily abundant. Even the wind that blew past his face had spiritual energy surging in it. Ji Xinyue also quickly realized this. It seemed that Rong Yue Tianlan didn't lie to her. This place was very beneficial for recovering from injuries. She sensed the characteristics of the spiritual force, and the fragrance of the plants was mostly with spiritual force. She cultivated fire spiritual force, and with spiritual force nurtured fire, so her cultivation would be stronger. Then she would recover even faster. She could achieve twice the result with half the effort. She breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, with her injuries, she would need to meditate for a month to fully recover. But if she cultivated here, the time would be halved. Do you like it here? A voice sounded. Ji Xinyue looked up and saw Rong Yue Tianlan leaning against a coconut tree, looking at her with a smile. Ji Xinyue nodded. It's very beautiful. She answered like a tourist who came here to play. After praising his island, Ji Xinyue went straight to the point. There should be a spirit eye here, right? I wonder where it is. Can I use it? If she cultivated in the spirit core, her healing speed would be even faster. She couldn't wait to fully recover and return to the Ziyun sect. Rong Yue Tianlan's eyes dimmed slightly. Follow me. He turned around and strode forward. Ji Xinyue followed behind, and for some reason, she felt that Rong Yue Tianlan's back had a bleak and distant feeling. Her heart tightened, and she wanted to hurry up and walk with him, but after thinking about it, she decided against it. It was a green treehouse. The furnishings in the treehouse were extremely simple, and there were only 2 futons. However, the spiritual force in the treehouse was so dense that it almost dyed the air green. Taking a breath, the fresh smell almost seeped into the limbs and bones. This was the spring of the spiritual force of the entire island. After Ji Xinyue came in with Rong Yue Tianlan, she didn't want to leave. She knew that Rong Yue Tianlan had brought her to this place to let her use it. Gratitude grew in her heart and she couldn't help but say, "Thank you." Halfway through her words, she suddenly remembered the punishment when Rong Yue Tianlan said thank you to her. She quickly stopped talking. Rong Yue Tianlan did not give her any punishment this time. He just nodded and told her some things to take note of when meditating here. After a few more words of advice, he left. Ji Xinyue opened her mouth slightly. She looked at the 2 praying mats, then looked at his departing figure. She wanted to invite him to meditate with her, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. She knew that he had not fully recovered, and this place was a sacred place for healing. There were also 2 praying mats, so the 2 of them could actually recover together here. Did he have another place to heal? Or was he trying to avoid suspicion? Ji Shenyue felt that she was a little crazy. When he shamelessly approached her, she just wanted to push him away. Now that they were really in a relationship like friends, she felt a sense of loss. She raised her hand and knocked on her own head. What was wrong with her? Could it be that after being injured once, her emotions had also become abnormal? She was worried about personal gains and losses, and her emotions were changing so much that even she herself found it unbelievable. Chapter 3006. She didn't want to think about it anymore. She contacted her eldest senior brother first, and was relieved to know that the Ziyun sect was still peaceful. Before Rong Yuetian left, he left her a few pills, and told her to take one a day. He said that it would be very helpful for her cultivation here. He was very considerate of her. This person was extraordinarily meticulous in his work. Ji Shenyue suppressed all the irrelevant emotions in her heart. After taking a pill, she sat on the futon and began to meditate. She meditated for 3 days. When she woke up, she felt refreshed. The telekinesis in her body seemed to have recovered quite a bit, and was already flowing very vigorously. The wounds on her body were also disappearing. She had personally checked it. The wound that was originally more than 10 centimeters wide had shrunk by half. The remaining half was also faint, and had a healthy pink color. True recovery was just around the corner. Rong Yuetian probably didn't come to see her these 3 days, because everything in this small treehouse was still in its original position. There were no traces of him being here. It seemed that he should be meditating somewhere to recover. Ji Shenyue suddenly wanted to see him. After all, he gave her such a good place to recover, and gave her such a good pill. It was reasonable for her to thank him, and even apologize to him. After all, she almost destroyed him. She shouldn't have used so much strength at that time. I wonder if he's all right? Ji Shenyue had always wanted to ask him how he was, and if there was anything wrong with him. But first, she felt a little wronged. Second, she felt that this was not a good question to ask. She couldn't possibly ask if her younger brother was all right, right? In the end, it was delayed, but there was still guilt in his heart. Perhaps he was indeed unable to control himself when he kept touching her. Her reaction was a little overboard. She should have rejected him in a gentler way. Even if she wanted to push him, she should have used less strength. The more Ji Shenyue thought about it, the more she couldn't sit still. She jumped up and ran out of the door. This island wasn't big. It was easy to wander around, not to mention Ji Shenyue, who ran like a whirlwind. In less than an hour, she had already walked through all the pavilions and buildings. No, he was nowhere to be seen. However, there were some places that had been prepared with fruits and other ingredients. The fruits were placed on the table, while the ingredients were in the kitchen. Ji Shenyue even found a letter in his small living room. There were only a few short sentences on the letter. I have something to do outside. You can continue cultivating, and leave after you've fully recovered. Ji Shenyue. She looked at the signature. It was left yesterday. It seemed that he had left yesterday. She was the only one left on this island. Where would he go? Could it be that something had happened outside? Is he in a hurry to go out and deal with it? Could it be that the Ziyun sect? Almost without thinking, Ji Shenyue raised her hand and searched for a sound-transmitting talisman on her body. After searching for a long time, she still couldn't find a sound-transmitting talisman. Instead, she took out a letter. For the sake of your cultivation, I'm confiscating all sound-transmitting talismans. Once you've completely recovered and left this place, you can search for it in an acacia tree 50 miles from here. Ji Shenyue. This was tantamount to completely cutting off her connection to the outside world. But she was concerned about her own sect. What if something happened? Ji Shenyue clenched her fists. This person was too arbitrary. He did things without consulting her at all. She knew that he was being kind, but she didn't want his kindness now. Chapter 3007. She would not be able to continue practicing if she was stuck in the drum and worried. No, she had to go out. She had already recovered 2/5 of her martial arts, so it should not be difficult for her to leave this place. She knew that there was a protective barrier here, but her ability to break barriers was very strong, so this barrier should not be difficult for her. An hour later, Ji Xinyu sat on a big rock by the sea, panting. She looked at the letter in her hand and clenched her fists again and again. The sky here was obviously the same as the sky outside, but when she flew up, she frequently hit walls. The barrier around this island was not ordinary. She used countless methods but still could not break it. Not only did she not break it, but she also shook down a letter. On the letter, there was still Rong Yu Tianlan's handwriting. If you focus on practicing, you can recover in 7 days. Before your power fully recovers, you will not be able to break the barrier here. The letter even had a specific method to break the barrier here. Ji Xinyu had already tried, and her power was indeed not up to par. It seemed that he had considered all possibilities. Ji Xinyu sat by the sea for a while, and also understood a principle. If the outside world was really turned upside down, then with her current ability, she could only be cannon fodder if she went out, and nothing would change. It was better to recover all her power first, and then go out to take a look. Besides, he was out now, and he knew what she cared about the most. He would definitely ensure the safety of the Ziyun sect for her. With him watching over it, her sect should not have any accidents. Moreover, she still had those senior brothers. Those people were not easy to deal with. If any danger really came, they would be able to resist for a while. For now, she could only comfort herself like this. Then she jumped up and went back to the treehouse to practice. She had to practice hard and strive to recover as soon as possible. Didn't Rong Yu Tianlan say that she could recover in 7 days? She would strive to be earlier, and earlier. After she recovered and went out, the first thing she would do was to return to the Ziyun sect. The second thing was to find Rong Yu Tianlan and have a good fight with him. It would be best if she could also lock him in a place where he could not come out. The moon god sword had always been by her side. Just now, when she was trying to break the barrier, it had also used a lot of strength. However, the barrier was too strange, and it was not something that could be broken by a divine weapon. Because of this, it was even despised by Ji Xinyu. She despised it for dropping the ball at a crucial moment. But it turned out that it wasn't that strong after all. The moon god sword was despised to the point of depression. It felt that this barrier also had a grudge with it. After it caught up with Ji Xinyu's footsteps, it suddenly appeared in front of her eyes, the tip of its sword constantly swaying, as if it was tilting its head and sizing her up. Ji Xinyu looked at it, and thought that it was going to kill its master. She suddenly took a step back and looked at it coldly. "What are you doing?" Moon God Sword said. "Master, I realize that you are full of energy right now. Your eyes are very bright, and your face is very red." Ji Xinyu was speechless. "Since when have I not been full of energy? My face is red because I was busy just now." "No, master, you're not the same as before." What's different?" Ji Xinyu raised her eyebrows. "You used to be like a man. Now you look very feminine." In the past, she was forthright and magnanimous, and did things swiftly and decisively. If one did not know her identity, she really looked like a man when she was dressed as a man. Moreover, she had a faint, dejected and world-weary temperament, as if she did not care about life and death. Chapter 3008. But now, her face was flushed red, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Although she was angry, she still had the aura of a delicate girl. Her whole person gave off a feeling of vitality and vitality. Of course, the moon god sword could not summarize so much. It only said its intuition. You used to have a strong murderous aura when you were angry, but now you look like an angry little girl with rich expressions, like a young girl yearning for love. Ji Xinyu was speechless. She slapped the sword away. "Get lost, you're the one who's yearning for love." She dashed away. On the way, she could not help but raise her hand to touch her cheek. Her cheeks were very hot, and her heart was beating very happily. She also felt that her current mood was indeed different from before. Originally, when she saw the green mountains and clear waters, It did not shock her. Now, when she looked at the flowers by the roadside, they seemed to be swaying endlessly in spring. What was wrong with her? Was it really like what the moon god sword said, that she was yearning for love? Was she in love? Ji Xinyue's heart beat wildly again, and Rongyue Tianlan's figure flashed across her mind. Stop. Now was not the time to think about these messy things. She really needed to quickly recover from her cultivation. Everything could wait until she recovered her cultivation. Ziyun sect. The Ziyun sect seemed to be calm and peaceful, just like usual. However, the third disciple on duty this year, Ji Xinyue's third senior brother, felt that something was not quite right. Originally, the Ziyun sect's disciples did not stay in the Ziyun sect often. Except for the eldest senior brother, who was always here. The others would come back once a year to help the eldest senior brother deal with the sect's affairs. As for the senior brothers and junior brothers who were not on duty, they would come back to visit their master from time to time. And people who were not from the Ziyun sect were not allowed to take half a step into the Ziyun sect, except for their master's birthday. This time the third senior brother was on duty. A few days ago, it was no different from usual. But 5 days ago, ninth senior brother Xie Fenglu suddenly came back, and he brought an outsider with him. He said it was his friend, called Huang Qinglu. At that time, the disciples guarding the gate did not want to break the rules, nor did they want to offend the ninth senior uncle, so they came to ask him. After all, the disciples guarding the gate were under his command. Just as he was about to rush over, eldest senior brother had already led the two of them in. Not only did he come in, he even led them to master. Since eldest senior brother had made the decision, third senior brother could not say anything. Eldest senior brother had personally arranged accommodations for the two of them. What was strange was that eldest senior brother had actually arranged for Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu to stay in the same room, even though there were so many rooms in the Ziyun sect. He had even given the two of them special privileges, allowing them to wander around the Ziyun sect as they pleased. No one was allowed to stop them. Third senior brother was a straightforward person. He felt that it was fine for his ninth junior brother to stroll around casually, but why should an outsider like Huang Qinglu casually stroll around? He didn't like this and couldn't help but ask his master for his opinion. At that time, his master was fiddling with a pearl that shone like moonlight. Hearing his doubts, he casually told him not to worry about it. He also said that this Huang Qinglu was an old friend of his and could be trusted. Since master had said so, third senior brother had nothing else to say. However, there was still a knot in his heart, and he couldn't help but pay more attention to Huang Qinglu's whereabouts. That night, he found something unusual. In the middle of the night, his ninth junior brother and Huang Qinglu came out of the room. Under the starlight, ninth junior brother's face was not very good, and he spoke bluntly to Huang Qinglu. Chapter 3009. The two of them seemed to be arguing. Third senior brother vaguely heard two sentences. "You'd better pray that she's fine, or I'll be the first to sacrifice you." Huang Qinglu said softly, "As long as you do it within 10 days, she'll be fine." At that time, third senior brother had accidentally stepped on a dead branch and alarmed the two people who were arguing. The two of them immediately looked at him. He did not know if it was an illusion, but third senior brother felt like he was instantly surrounded by a murderous aura. However, the murderous aura disappeared in a blink of an eye. Xie Fenglu walked directly to him. Third senior brother. Third senior brother was a little dizzy after that. He could not even remember clearly. When he regained consciousness, he found himself lying in his room. Everything that happened at night seemed to be a dream. He vaguely remembered everything that happened at night. After thinking about it, he directly ran to visit ninth junior brother. However, he met eldest senior brother on the way. Eldest senior brother told him that ninth junior brother and Huang Qinglu had urgent matters to attend to, and had left early in the morning after bidding farewell to master. Eldest senior brother's face was a little pale, as if he had not slept the entire night. Thus, he hurriedly chatted with him for a while before leaving. Third senior brother was a little confused about whether last night was a dream or not. but he could not find anyone to confirm it. After Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu left, third senior brother kept feeling that something was wrong. Later, he finally found out what was wrong. The wild beast valley at the back of the mountain suddenly became much quieter. Originally, there were often the roars of various wild beasts, but now, only a few voices could be heard occasionally, and they were still weak. Third senior brother was puzzled and wanted to go there to take a look. That place was a forbidden area. Without master's permission, no disciple was allowed to go near it. Thus, third senior brother only wanted to take a look from afar. If he found that something was really wrong, then he would report to master. He went at night. In the end, before he reached the vicinity of the wild beast valley, he saw master standing near the entrance of the valley, looking at the wild beast valley from afar, as if he was thinking about something. Looking from afar under the moonlight, master's back seemed a little bleak. After a while, he heard master sigh softly. "What will come will come." That sigh was very faint, and third senior brother almost did not hear it clearly. He only faintly felt that master, who had always been lazy and casual, seemed to have something on his mind this time. Third senior brother was about to go over and greet master, when he saw eldest senior brother coming out of the valley and reporting something to master. The two of them were probably using a secret language, so third senior brother didn't know what they were talking about. He only saw that their expressions were somewhat heavy. In the end, Grandmaster Ziyin let out a soft sigh and said, "This is also a type of fate. Have you gotten rid of them?" Eldest senior brother replied, "Don't worry, master. I know what I'm doing." Then the master and disciple left. Third senior brother was filled with curiosity, so he made a bold move. He secretly snuck into Beast Valley, only to find that it was very deserted. Originally, there were all kinds of strange beasts roaming the Beast Valley, but after he went in and patrolled for a long time, he only saw a few weak ones. They were still cowering in the grass, but when they heard someone coming, they all ran away like rabbits. Third senior brother did not give up and walked around again. In the end, he found the skeleton of an animal in an extremely remote corner. The skeleton seemed to belong to a two-winged lion. It was not scary to find the skeleton of an animal in such a place. After all, the animals in this valley had always been prey to the strong. Every day, animals were killed and eaten. Scattered bones could often be seen in the valley. Chapter 30:10. But this skeleton was a little strange. Its fur was still there, but its flesh was gone. It was really just skin and bones, as if something had sucked all its flesh and blood dry. The winged lion was an extremely ferocious beast, and stood at the top of the food chain in this valley. It was unusual for it to suddenly die here. Third senior brother was about to go forward to check the lion's cause of death, but when he raised his head, he saw eldest senior brother. Trespassing into the Beast Valley was originally a serious crime. Third senior brother was caught red-handed, and thought that he would be punished to face the wall for a few years. Unexpectedly, eldest senior brother did not plan to expose him. He even led him around the Beast Valley a few more times. The two of them found some bones of ferocious beasts that had been sucked dry. Eldest senior brother told him that there was an abnormality in the Beast Valley. A blood-sucking monster had appeared, and this monster was very powerful. It came and went without a trace, and no one knew what kind of mutation it was. He and his master had not found the monster's whereabouts until today. His master and he were afraid that it would cause panic among the disciples, so they sealed off the news. He and his master were searching for the monster's whereabouts, but they did not have enough manpower. He was planning to gather all the junior brothers to discuss the plan to eliminate the monster. Ninth senior brother and Huang Qinglu also came back because of this matter. Now the two of them went out to ask for help, so they left early. After eldest senior brother said this, the doubts in third senior brother's heart disappeared without a trace. When the sect was in trouble, the disciple naturally had to bravely take the lead. Third senior brother immediately volunteered to go out and ask for help. He had a wide circle of friends, and still had some capable friends. However, eldest senior brother waved his hand, and said that the mountain needed to be patrolled, but they did not have enough manpower. He still led the disciples to guard the mountain, and he and his master would ask for help. At this point, third senior brother naturally could not say anything else, and immediately agreed. While the two of them were talking, eldest senior brother received a sound transmission from Ji Xinyu. Third senior brother knew this junior sister's ability. She was even stronger than the rest of them. Ji Xinyu asked about the situation in the mountain. Third senior brother thought that eldest senior brother would tell the truth to little junior sister and ask her to come back quickly. However, he did not expect eldest senior brother to only report the good news to little junior sister, saying that everything was normal. After the voice transmission talisman ended, he could not help but ask eldest senior brother for the reason. Eldest senior brother sighed and said, "Junior sister has been contacting me recently to ask about the sex affairs. She must have sensed something, which is why she is so worried. With her personality, she would definitely come back immediately to check on it. However, she has not returned for a long time. Obviously, she has encountered some accident that has hindered her and prevented her from coming back. If that's the case, why tell her the truth and make her worry?" His words were so reasonable that third senior brother had nothing to say in reply. After the two of them finished patrolling the mountain, eldest senior brother handed over the task of patrolling to him. Third senior brother had been patrolling for 2 days with a worried heart, but nothing had happened in the past 2 days. However, third senior brother could not sleep that night. He wanted to walk around the sect again, and in the process, he accidentally heard 2 disciples gossiping. One of the disciples said that in his sleep, he heard a roaring sound coming from the Beast Valley, as if the beast in the valley was experiencing some kind of doomsday. He was frightened and wanted to get up to take a look, but he tripped and fell. When he woke up, it was already dawn. He did not know if the sound was a dream, and even asked his companion if he heard it. Chapter 30:11. His companion shook his head like a rattledrum. He said that he slept very well that night, and did not hear anything. He even teased the disciple who heard the sound, and asked if he had a nightmare. The 2 disciples were chatting and third senior brother heard it. Third senior brother was a little stunned, because the time that the 2 disciples talked about was the night when Xie Fenglu and Huang Qinglu returned. He then thought about how he fainted for no reason, and felt that there was something fishy about it. But when he told eldest senior brother about it, eldest senior brother said that the blood-sucking monster probably had some special ability that affected people's thinking and caused them to have nightmares. The story of the nightmare was enough to cover up this strange incident. Third senior brother was skeptical. He still didn't believe that he was dreaming. He secretly visited a few more disciples, but they all slept very soundly that night. No one heard anything else. Third senior brother finally believed that he was dreaming. He knew that his junior sister had a lot of experience in the martial world, so he could not help but contact her. He wanted to tell her about what had happened in the past few days, and ask her for advice. But he did not expect that his junior sister's voice transmission talisman would not go through. After 8 days, Crystal Sky Ocean welcomed another uninvited guest. Crystal Sky Ocean liked to have hurricanes all year round. There would be one every day. It changed the scenery of Crystal Sky Ocean completely. The icebergs changed their appearance every day. The old ones were smashed and new ones were born. There were changes every day. If one did not have a strong sense of direction, they would not be able to find this place just by looking at landmarks. This kind of hurricane could tear apart icebergs. Usually, no one would dare to stand in the middle of a hurricane. But now, in the middle of the hurricane, there were 2 people standing in the air. One was a black-robed man, and the other was a jade-robed man. The black-robed man was black from head to toe. Only his face was snow white. Even his lips were slightly pale. The aura around him was colder than the ice and snow in the sky. "Huang Luqing, open the sea. If anything happens to her, I will skin you alive." The eyes of the man in the light green robe dimmed, and he replied, "Yes, my ice realm can trap her soul and prevent it from leaking out, so nothing will happen to her." With a wave of his sleeve, a light blue ray of light cut through the sea surface. The turbulent sea level actually rolled and separated into 2 sides, gradually revealing a dark passage. With a flash, the black-robed man leaped into the tunnel. Huang Luqing stood in the middle of the hurricane, supporting the blue light, pursing her thin lips. It was obvious that the sea-splitting technique consumed a lot of mental power. As time passed, his face became paler and paler, and his fingertips trembled slightly. An hour later, a figure flashed in the dark passageway. The black-robed man jumped out. The moment the black-robed man jumped out, the blue light on Huang Luqing's fingertips finally disappeared. The seawater that had been forced apart came back together with a crashing sound, emitting an earth-shattering roar like a landslide or a tsunami. Huang Luqing's figure swayed slightly. Before he could stand firm, the black-robed man had charged over to him like a ghost. With a raise of his hand, a black light blasted towards Huang Luqing, causing Huang Luqing to stagger and almost fall into the sea. The black-robed man was empty-handed. He gritted his teeth and said, "Bastard, there is no such thing as your ice realm down there. She is not here at all." Huang Luqing seemed to be injured by his attack. Blood gushed out from the corner of her mouth, but her body was very straight. Chapter 30:12. The black-robed man's words made his expression change. He said, "Impossible," and jumped into the sea. The black-robed man looked down, his eyes dark. He clenched his fists and pursed his lips. A moment later, he made up his mind and jumped into the sea. This time, after 2 hours, the turbulent sea suddenly split into 2 sides. Huang Luqing pulled the black-robed man's sleeve out of the sea and jumped onto an ice mountain. The black-robed man's face was pale, but his eyes seemed to be burning with fire. He said word by word, "Huang Luqing, what do you say? Why is she not here?" Huang Luqing's face was not much better than his. She was probably rescued by someone. Rescued? You put her in such a purgatory of ice and hid her at the bottom of the sea. Who can save her? Is it your kind? Didn't you say that no one in the world can break your ice world? Huang Luqing took a deep breath. I don't know the details, but my ice world can't be broken easily, and it's even more impossible for those monsters at the bottom of the sea. She can only be rescued by someone. Demon Master, you can try to contact her. Maybe you can? Her words reminded the black-robed man. His eyes lit up, and he immediately took out a voice transmission talisman. A moment later, his face turned even paler. The voice transmission talisman could not be connected at all. She was not saved. She was not saved at all. The black-robed man was in a daze, and the voice transmission talisman in his hand fell into the sea. His eyes slowly moved to Huang Luqing, and his voice was cold. Huang Luqing, you killed her. I will bury you with her. A black light quickly condensed in his palm. Huang Luqing straightened her body and looked at him. Devil Master, your subordinate is only doing this to force you to awaken. Also, she may not necessarily be dead. If there is no external force acting on that ice shell, it is absolutely impossible to open it. So the possibility of her being rescued is very high. Even if Demon Master kills me, I will still say the same. As he spoke, he quickly checked the surroundings. However, so many days had passed, and the environment here changed every day. Even if there were any clues left behind, they would not be able to find them now. Huang Luqing, I remember that you have the illusion mirror technique. You can check what has happened in a place. You can use that method to check. I must find her dead or alive. Huang Luqing's body stiffened slightly. Your Majesty, that illusion mirror technique is extremely taxing on psychokinesis. So what if I use my telekinesis? I won't take your life. Quickly use that method. The black-robed man's voice was cold. Huang Luqing looked at him deeply, closed her eyes slightly and pondered for a moment before finally agreeing. All right. Your subordinate obeys. When the blue light hit the surface of the sea, the originally turbulent surface of the sea gradually condensed. The surface of the sea was like a large mirror, slowly reflecting an image. A figure appeared in the image. It was the scene of Rong Yuetian saving Ji Shenhua. This scene was fast-forwarded. It was extremely fast, from when he saved her from the water to when he woke her up and finally left. This technique was not an ordinary consumption of energy. Huang Luqing desperately held on, and after a cup of tea's time, the mirror finally disappeared. Silence. The whole world was silent. Only the whistling of the cold wind swept through the world. The black-robed man clenched his fingers tightly, his knuckles turning white. He wasn't stupid. Although the scene flashed by, he could see that the two of them had some physical contact. Chapter 30:13. Rongyue Tianlan was obviously chasing after a beauty, and Ji Xinyu. She didn't seem to reject Rongyue Tianlan, and even had feelings for him. The woman he had liked for so many years, the woman he wanted to get, was getting further and further away from him. What was worse was that the date of her rescue should be 6 days ago, and she had been with Rongyue Tianlan in this place for 5 whole days. In these 5 days, she had contacted several people through the sound transmission talisman, but she didn't contact him. It seemed that she was really suspicious of him. She was afraid that she wanted to get rid of him. They might not be able to go back at all. The black-robed man's fingers trembled slightly, and his thin lips were tightly pursed. It was originally a happy thing to know that the person he was concerned about was alive and well, but the interaction between her and Rongyue Tianlan made him feel as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart, making him almost unable to breathe. He kept looking at the disappearing mirror, and didn't look at Huang Luqing, who was pale and had blood on the corner of her lips because of the extreme consumption of her mind power. Huang Luqing stood in front of him with difficulty. "Devil Master, she is indeed fine, let's leave? Your body hasn't fully recovered, and this place is not good for your health." The black-robed man glanced at her coldly, and his voice was slightly cold. "Quickly go and check where he took her. I want to find her." Huang Luoqing's eyes flashed slightly, and she sighed softly. "Devil Master, Rongyue Tianlan is already an immortal, and he has no fixed residence, and his whereabouts are all over the world. If he wants to hide someone, it's not easy to find." Originally, Devil Master knew a tracking technique, and it was not difficult to find him. But when Devil Master awakened, he couldn't bear to consume all the beasts, so his power was not fully recovered, and he couldn't use that skill. I think it's better to wait for Devil Master to fully recover before looking for her. Since she is still alive, she might come out voluntarily in the future. Moreover, Rongyue Tianlan already knows that Devil Master is about to awaken, and he will definitely come out to stop it. At that time, they might come out together, and there is no need for Devil Master to look for them. When they come out together, maybe they are already married. The black-robed man's voice was cold. "No, I must find her immediately, and take her away from Rongyue Tianlan." His eyes were like poisonous needles. "You don't have a solution now?" Huang Luqing was stunned for a moment, and after a moment of silence she said, "If Devil Master must find her, you can only use one strategy." The black-robed man's eyes lit up. "What plan?" Huang Luqing said, "This subordinate has investigated this exalted immortal beforehand. A few days ago, he had a close relationship with Ji Xinyue's younger sister, Ji Tianyue." The black-robed man said impatiently. "I already knew that. But that guy has already broken up with Ji Tianyue, why mention her?" Huang Luqing said indifferently. Although he and Ji Tianyue broke up, he once promised Ji Tianyue a condition, saying that if she were to encounter a real-life danger, he would save her once. The black-robed man's eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" Huang Luqing nodded. "This subordinate learned about this from Ji Tianyue's maidservant. It can't be false." The black-robed man slowly clenched his fists. "Very good. Then he would lure the snake out of its hole." These days Ji Tianyue's life was extremely bitter. Her house was broken, her meals were cold, and her bed was made of wood. For someone like her who had been spoiled since childhood, this was simply a nightmare. Moreover, there was no time for her to wake up. "My dearest, happy Singles Day. Shopping is awesome. You can find a good husband and buy good things." Chapter 30:14. She cried, threw a tantrum, and even smashed things, but none of that attracted a single glance from her father. She regretted it even more. In order to make her father value her again, she even told the servant girl that heavenly immortal Rong Yu had not given up on her, and promised to save her if she was in danger. This proved that he still liked her. In order to verify this, she even took out the precious sound-transmitting talisman from the servant girl. The servant girl only chuckled and left. She had no intention of passing the message. That night, Ji Shenyu was shivering on her bed in the cold palace. It was already winter, but there was only a thin blanket on her bed. It could not resist the bone-chilling cold at all. Just as she was having trouble falling asleep, there was a sudden breeze, and a black shadow appeared in front of her. In the dark night, she could not see the person's face clearly. She could only vaguely feel that the person was tall and handsome. Her heart skipped a beat, and she opened her mouth to call out. That person waved his sleeve and Ji Tianyu's entire body froze. Not only could she not move, she could not even make a sound. That person's loose black clothes were like a bat in the dark night. He calmly walked forward and touched her body with his cold fingers. Ji Tianyu did not know what he was going to do. She opened her eyes wide in fear and felt that his fingers were as cold as snow. Goosebumps instantly appeared on her skin. That person was so close to her, but she could not see his face clearly. That person's face seemed to have merged with the night. That person was not trying to take advantage of her. Instead, he took out a unique sound-transmitting talisman from her storage space. Then he sensed the psychokinesis aura on it and smiled deeply. Ji Tianyu actually wanted to shout that she was protected by heavenly immortal Rongyu, but she could not do so because her acupoints were sealed. She only felt that person's smile had a sinister chill, causing her to shiver again. That person waved his sleeve at her face and she fainted. Ji Tianyu was woken up by the cold. She was only wearing a single shirt when she was thrown into a crevice in the ice. There were slippery ice walls on both sides. When she looked up, she could only see a small part of the sky. This crevice was at least 3,000 to 4,000 feet deep and was extremely narrow. She was on a platform at the bottom of the crevice. This platform was less than 2 feet wide and was extremely slippery. This platform was located in the middle of the ice crevice. The crevice was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Ji Tianyua didn't understand why she was here. When she saw the situation around her, she was scared silly. She desperately pressed her body against the ice wall, shaking like a leaf in the wind and rain. She had already regained her freedom, but with her mediocre martial arts skills, she couldn't go up at all. "Why did you harm me?" She screamed help. Her voice almost tore through the air. But the ice crevice was too deep, and her voice couldn't travel out. It hit the ice wall and made a buzzing sound. No one bothered with her. She didn't know how many times she had shouted until her voice was hoarse, but no one came. She shivered uncontrollably from the cold, and grew more and more desperate. Finally, she burst into tears. She didn't know how long she had been crying. It was so long that even she felt despair. Suddenly, a figure flashed on the ice wall above her. A black-clothed man appeared. That man covered the sky above her and blocked all the light. She couldn't see the man's face clearly. She only felt that the man's black robe was like a messenger of the night. The coldness of that man was so heavy that it made her shiver from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 30:15. She also recognized that this person should be the one who brought her here. "You, what do you want to do? Why did you bring me here?" "Let me tell you, I'm not someone to be trifled with. My father is the South Sky Emperor. My sister is the famous Princess Ji Shenyue, and immortal Rongyu also protects me like a treasure. If anything happens to me, they won't forgive you. Let me go, let me go. I can pretend this never happened." Ji Tianyue threatened while trembling. The man laughed coldly. "Do you want to live or not? If you want to live, use the sound-transmitting talisman that Rongyu Tianlan gave you to ask him to save your life." Ji Tianyue was stunned and widened her eyes. "How do you know I have this sound-transmitting talisman?" That person didn't answer, and only looked at her coldly. Ji Tianyue suddenly had an epiphany. Are you going to harm my brother Rongyu? So you want me to ask him to come here? I don't want to be fooled by you. I won't do anything to betray brother Rongyu." That black-robed person laughed coldly. Then, it's up to you. To tell you the truth, this is the vast ice field, it's usually deserted. If no one comes to save you, only death awaits you. Choose for yourself. Ji Tianyue. Her face was pale, and her mouth was slightly open, but she couldn't say anything. That black-robed person turned to leave, but suddenly seemed to remember something and said, "If you ask him for help, you can say that you came here to relieve boredom and accidentally fell into this ice crevice. Don't say that I brought you here, or else he wouldn't have come if he knew this was a trap. Then only death awaits you." "No way. I won't say that. You're the one who wants to plot against Brother Rongyu. I must remind him." Ji Tianyue shouted subconsciously. That black-robed person seemed to laugh and said coldly, "If you're not afraid that he won't care about you, just tell him the truth." His figure flashed, and like a wisp of smoke, he floated upwards and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianyue. Her face was pale, and her body kept trembling. The black-robed man was right. If she told the truth, Rongyue Tianlan would not jump in, if she knew it was a trap. Then she could only freeze to death here. But if he lied and deceived Rongyue Tian, he might suffer a great loss from the black-robed man without knowing the reason. Was she lying or not? This place was bone-chilling cold. Standing on this small platform, Ji Tianyue's hands and feet were frozen stiff. She slowly squatted down, hugged her knees and wept. After a long while, she finally took out the voice transmission talisman with trembling hands. On the icy plains, the black-robed man stood facing the wind, his sleeves fluttering in the wind. A moment later, Huang Luqing emerged from the crack in the ice and landed in front of him. "Devil Master, you guessed right. That girl did as you instructed." Haha. It seems like this little princess cherishes her life very much, even willing to sacrifice the life of her beloved for this. The black-robed man smiled coldly. She has always been this kind of person. For her own life, she can sacrifice anyone. How did Rongyue Tianlan reply to her? Rongyue Tianlan's answer was very simple. He told her to wait where she was, and that he would come. He didn't suspect anything? I don't think so. That girl is better at lying than you. I almost believed her. The black-robed man nodded. That's good. Then let's wait quietly for him to take the bait. Chapter 30:16. Huang Luqing pondered for a moment. Demon Lord, I think you should restore your power first before dealing with Rongyue Tianlan. Your current power is not even half of what it used to be. I'm afraid you're not his opponent. The black robe of the man in black fluttered. After a while he smiled coldly. It's only a matter of a night for me to fully recover. The other side is not ready yet, so there's no hurry. This time, we're just luring the snake out of its hole and testing his true strength. He looked up at the sky. He knows the technique of traveling 1,000 miles in an instant. He should be here soon. How's the arrangement? Huang Luqing nodded. It's all set up. We're just waiting for the fish to take the bait. The man in black robe's eyes flashed with a fiery light. It was a kind of revenge that was about to succeed. Rongyue Tianlan, I've prepared a feast for you. I'll invite you to taste it. This time, he didn't really want to take Rongyue Tianlan's life. After all, that person was at the level of a great immortal and couldn't be killed easily. However, he was confident that he could injure, or even seriously injure him. As long as Rongyue Tianlan was injured, he would definitely return to his current hiding place to heal. That way, they could follow him to his lair and find Ji Xinyu. This was the idea of the man in black robe. Huang Luqing was an expert in setting up hidden weapon arrays. Back then, those immortals had suffered a lot under his arrays. Therefore, many people had lost their lives. As long as Rongyue Tianlan appeared on this ice field, he would fall into their trap. Even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. The two of them hid in the air, waiting for Rongyue Tianlan to fall into the trap. They would then give him a fatal blow. 2 hours passed. 4 hours passed. 10 hours passed. 16 hours passed. 16 hours passed. A day passed. The sun rose and set in the sky. However, there was still no one on the huge ice field. Ji Tianyu, who was under the ice crack, was still crying and screaming at first. Later, Her voice became softer and softer, weaker and weaker. In such a world of ice and snow, even a 7 feet tall man couldn't stand it, let alone a delicate little girl like Ji Tianyu. Huang Luqing was afraid that she would freeze to death, so she went down to see her once. She found that although she was already unconscious from the cold, she was still alive and could still hold on for a day or two. They waited until the sun set the next day. Just when the black-robed man and Huang Luqing thought that Rongyue Tianlan would not come, a figure finally appeared in the distant eastern sky. Here it comes. The black-robed man had sharp eyes and saw that the person was Rongyue Tianlan. He was still dressed in a blue robe. He flew over from the horizon like a blue cloud. He had used an ordinary flying spell to fly over. The black-robed man's lips curled into a cold smile. It seemed like this heavenly immortal Rong. You really didn't think much of this little princess Ji Tianyue. Although she had promised to save her, she had come so late. Rong Yuishenlin finally landed on the snowy ground. He had been observing the surrounding environment while holding a voice transmission talisman in his hand. From time to time, he would correct his position and look for directions. Obviously, he was not familiar with the terrain. Although he could determine Ji Tianyue's general location, it was still difficult to pinpoint it accurately. He seemed to be searching for the footprints left behind by Ji Tianyue. After a while he finally found them. A woman's small footprints meandered towards the direction of the crack. After Rongyue Tianlan carefully observed the footprints, he seemed to be relieved. He followed the footprints and walked over. Chapter 30:17. The black-robed man sneered in his heart. It seemed that this exalted immortal still did not understand the climate here. It would snow at least once a day. Even if Ji Tianyue had left behind footprints, it had been a day and a night, and the footprints had long been blown away by the wind and snow. The footprints left behind now were made by Huang Luqing, and it completely matched the size of Ji Tianyue's small feet. Everything was as the black-robed man and Huang Luqing had imagined. Rongyue Tianlan walked step by step into the array they had set up. The array was finally activated, and all kinds of earth-shattering noises were incessant on the ice field. Bolts of lightning struck the array, and snow fog filled the sky. All kinds of ice and snow condensed into weapons, like a hornet's nest that had been poked, shot in the direction of Rongyue Tianlan. The originally flat snow surface directly cracked open, and all kinds of blue poisonous hidden weapons shot out from the cracks. An inescapable net. It could be said that what was set up around Rongyue Tianlan was a real inescapable net. Even the 4 kings of this continent would be flustered and overwhelmed if they encountered such a sneak attack. There was no escape if he was injured. Rongyue Tianlan was also taken aback by the sudden danger. He dodged left and right in the array, but after all, it was too sudden. He was in a passive position at first, and it was obviously difficult to turn the situation around later. Soon he was injured. His shoulders, ribs, legs, arms. He was hit several times and blood dyed his blue robe red. Those hidden weapons were all poisonous. After he was injured, his movements became slower and slower, but he did not give up and attacked left and right, trying to break out of the encirclement. The black-robed man hid in the air and watched coldly, a bloodthirsty smile on his lips. During the war years, he and Huang Qinglu had encountered exalted immortals before. After being ambushed in such an array, they were also seriously injured and almost lost their lives. Now, Rongyue Tianlan was indeed not out of his expectations. It was only a matter of time before he was seriously injured. The black-robed man held his chin with his fingers. It seemed that he had overestimated this opponent. This exalted immortal Rongyue was just so. There was nothing happier than seeing his love rival trapped in the inescapable net he had set up. So the black-robed man, who had always been gloomy, could not help but laugh happily like a child. Huang Qinglu was standing beside him, manipulating the array formation to continue attacking Rongjuishan. He glanced at the black-robed man, and suddenly saw his childlike smile. His heart skipped a beat, and his fingers trembled slightly. It had been far too long since he had seen the demon lord like this. Rongjuishanlin, who was inside the array, had suffered countless injuries. Her blue robe was almost soaked in blood, and was no longer as free and easy as before. She looked like she was in a sorry state. His footsteps were unsteady, and he was obviously an arrow at the end of its flight. The black-robed man's figure flashed, and he suddenly charged into the formation. Huang Qinglu was shocked. He knew that the Devil Lord would plot against Rongyue Tianlan, but he felt that it was not the right time yet. He should wait a little longer. The black-robed man was in midair, and his thunderous palm had already smashed down. This move contained the essence of almost all of his cultivation, and it was once his greatest weapon to defeat his enemies. Back then, countless immortals above the divine monarch level had died under this move. The black and misty palm chi pressed down on Rong Yuetian like Mount Tai. Buffed. Rong Yuetian couldn't dodge in time, and was hit directly by this move. Boom! With a loud bang, Rong Yuetianlan, who was covered in blood, had a flash of red light around her body. She actually exploded under this palm. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.